Welcome to Directly to You. It's the 186th episode of Directly to You, and it's the fanatixfour podcast. I'm AJ of fanatixfour. I'm joined by Parker, also of fanatixfour, and I'm joined by Pete for the first time ever. He's never been here, not a single time.
2 weeks in a row, first time ever.
Yeah, never been here for 2 weeks in a row. He's from Flipscreen Games. You can check him out. Link in the description and all that good stuff. You can support the show by going to youtube.com/fanatixfour, twitch.tv/fanatixfour, and give him $4.99. And if you're on Twitch specifically and you have an Amazon Prime account, it don't even got to be your $4.99. You can get it from Jeffy B. Take it out of his wallet. He doesn't need it. In exchange for that, you get loyalty badges, you get emotes, you get Switch keys from time to time. You get access to the supporters only Discord where you can listen to us record this show while we do it right now. You can contribute to the peanut gallery. You can make fun of people. It's a good time. Maybe don't make fun of people, but you know,
nice.
Man. You know,
make fun of us because we can read the room.
You could read that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But you can also join the Discord for the free. And I mean, you can join the Discord and be a part of the show if you join for the free, if you contribute to the Discord by being in chats and, you know, writing in channels and whatnot by clicking the link in the description. That's it for that. We play video games here.
You sure did.
Are you guys playing video games? Other than the one that we're going to talk about, because obviously, duh.
But that's the thing is, aside from that one that we're going to talk about, I haven't touched another game at all. I think I just broke like 45 hours.
Nice.
That's around where I'm at too.
Yeah, so it seems like we're in a similar boat these days. Yeah, I'm playing a ton of Pokemon and nothing else right now. True. All other games have been completely abandoned.
Yeah. Okay. Have you played anything else?
I've got a short answer to until we get to Pokemon. An IRL friend did the whole soundtrack and like sound design and stuff for an indie game called Vagante. That's like a roguelike kind of Spelunky-ish. And so I picked that up because I was like, oh, cool. A friend made this. So yeah, I played that a little bit. It was like the day after Arceus came out. So I didn't play it much because I'm doing other things. It's really hard. But it seems fun. It's kind of like, roguelike sort of thing. You go in and, you know, try to beat some things and then overall you get better, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So go check it out if you want. I thought he did a great job on the sound design. I wouldn't say it's my favorite roguelike or anything like that necessarily, but I was supporting the music part especially, and that part was done really well. So nice. All right, that's about it for that.
I played a little bit more of the Yu-Gi-Oh video game because it came out on mobile. And it sucks on mobile, dude.
Really? Interesting.
It's terrible. I hate it.
Just like the touch controls are bad, or like what's bad about it?
I just don't like it. And also, it's so when there's like an effect and it's like, hey, there's this thing that you can do. You want to do it? It's very confusing when you're like, all right, wait, let me look at the field and see if I want to do it, because like I almost like forfeited because I couldn't figure out how to pull the dialogue back up after I was like, let me check my field to see if it's worth activating this effect at this given time.
It's not good.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. So like I'm not playing that on mobile anymore. I'm gonna pass. Other than that, still. Yeah.
I was gonna say with the card game thing, it is funny playing certain card games digitally versus, I don't know, like physically or something too, where like there's a game called Ascension that's just like a deck building kind of. I've played the like free part of the mobile version, and I played it quite a lot, and I got really good at the 2 decks it lets you play for free. But a friend of mine who introduced it to me also like obviously really liked it, and so he got like the full card game with like all the decks and stuff like that, and so we played it with the cards, and there were just so many things that I realized like that the game prompts me to do or to not do, or that I'm allowed to do, and like it shows how things interact, like all this stuff that once I had it in front of me I was like I guess I can do that. Okay. And like it took so much longer because I just got so fast at like not having to think about the superfluous, you know, like filtering stuff out of my brain. It was just like done for me in the game, and then in real life that was.
And it's also it's a double-edged sword, because it's like on one end it's like you can't cheat because it's like it tells you when you can and can't do a thing, but also it tells you when you can do a thing. So when your opponent goes to do something and there's like this pause, it's like, oh wait, he has something. Like something can be done in response to the things that I'm doing.
Something that's really
just
funny
hope they
is
don't pick up on it, but
yeah.
I mean, it's impossible
though,
to really not unless you're stupid.
Yeah,
you would potentially have that in real life anyway, though, right? Because like they would be pausing and looking and thinking, right? And it's like, okay, well, and it kind of plays into that.
See, but the thing about real life is like you can also like play into that as a bluff.
That's true.
You can't cheese it in the video game where it's like I might have something. If you don't have
nothing,
though.
Well, to be fair, I'm talking about a different interface because I mentioned last week I play MTG Arena, which is the Magic the Gathering equivalent, and sometimes it'll pause and it'll be like, oh, you can play a card right now, but it's like just not a good move. Like it's something that you would never do. But you literally could. So it's like, hey, you have the option. Right. So I think because of that, it kind of lulls everyone into this rhythm of like, I mean, they could have something they could play, but they also could just have a card that they're planning on playing 3 turns from now in regular play. Yeah, it's
right. And I feel like, and part of this is also like people that are like lapsed and don't really understand the game that well, where like they'll activate something. Like Pete, you played it before, right? You play Yu-Gi-Oh. You know,
yeah, back in the day.
They'll like activate like Dust Tornado to like, I'll activate like Mirror Force or something like that, and they'll be like Dust Tornado, and that doesn't negate; it just destroys. So it's like you could have activated that and that worked, but it didn't do what you wanted it to do. All your monsters are still going, and you wasted your card. So like in that situation, yeah, you could bluff, but also it's like
okay. Question for you guys, especially AJ, knowing Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff. In Pokemon, thinking like anime to game, or probably even more, even less so, anime to card game. The like 1-to-1 of like what's realistic in one or the other, like how those mesh together, isn't particularly 1-to-1, but it's in terms of like
a lot closer.
Only has one, 4 moves, but yeah. So I guess that's the question. Like obviously because it's a card game and it's a card game, then that, but like do they flub the rules or anything in the show?
Oh yeah, they cheat a lot.
Okay. Totally. Like I remember like one of the most like iconic things that happened in the anime was like when Yugi did the thing with Karibo, and and it's like that's not how those cards interact at all. That is a totally useless card, and it's
that's
very much.
If he was confident enough about it, the other guy would just believe it, I guess, and then
the heart of the cards, right?
Yeah, the hologram popped up.
That's not how that works.
It had to be fair.
Anyone who plays a TCG will tell you that it's all about math and it is 0% about heart.
Yeah, thanks. That's a fact.
Yep, there you
go. But yeah, also Smash, like always, getting better at the video game. Good times.
Classic.
Yep.
Good stuff.
That's it. Pokemon.
There we go.
I didn't talk about this game at all this week.
We could, let's do it now because you can talk.
We don't have to. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, do we want to talk about this now, or do we want to like do the news first, and then when it makes sense news wise, we segue into Pokemon and we go from there. I'm down for whatever. Just thought I'd present the idea.
Yeah, that's.
I say we leave it to Parker since he hasn't gotten to talk about it yet.
Yep. Yeah, let's do the new stuff and we'll get to it.
Okay.
Here's
saving the main event.
Yeah, here's my pins in it. Is number 1, Ashley's playing it. That's a fun thing. Nice. So we'll talk more about that. And then a lot more things that'll just kind of come up organically when we talk about them. I didn't make any notes or anything, so I don't know. But
here's my pins. There's only one.
I have a single.
And then there's some scattered ones just kind of floating around.
I have other pins, but I didn't place them.
Yeah. So, well, I guess in that front, then let's talk the Switch.
Yeah.
Nintendo numbers and stuff, sales. All those kinds of things. So we got the financial results, and you know what? I guess it's selling okay.
It's doing all right.
So that's pretty fun.
Little console that could, huh?
Yeah. It is funny. I saw John Cartwright, I think, shared a quote from, I think it was GameStop, that was like 2 weeks into the Switch life cycle. That was like, honestly, this thing could outsell the Wii, and that people were like,
talking to them like they're crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Like I definitely remember that, and I remember also being like, I mean, it could. I don't know. We don't know.
I mean, we have recorded evidence of our take for that. The thing is, like, the whole way through the Switch's life, after playing it, like at that preview event, I was like, oh yeah, no, this could do it. So,
as soon as I got hands on it, I was a believer, you know. And it's also like, I don't know, I get when the Wii U was such an embarrassment to be like, oh yeah, it's like safe money to bet against Nintendo, but it's like the idea that they were like, what if we took our famously before now very successful home consoles business and our extremely successful handheld business and put them together so there would never ever be a major software drought ever again. And it's like, well, you solved the problem, right? Like that was the problem that they had backed themselves into. You know?
And it was also like not even necessarily just the Wii U. It was like people that were like pundits like us that were like thinking they were being smart by saying like, oh, there's a trend happening here. Every home console sells less and less and less. So therefore, the Wii was actually the exception, not the Wii U. The Wii was. Yeah. So logic says that the Switch is going to sell less because they've been selling less and less and less every time. But they're not paying attention to the fact that really since the SNES, arguably the NES, they stopped being a successful home console company after the NES. Like everything else after that was like, but your handhelds though, like their handheld has always been their breadwinner since they started making them. So for them to take their breadwinner and then say, oh yeah, and people also like, you know, prettier games or whatever consoles can bring to the table that handhelds typically can't. Let's put those together and we're golden.
And it has the benefit of diminishing returns at this point too, where like even with the power disparity between it and other things, yes, it's like you can compare the two and be like, yep, looks better on the PS4, looks worse on the Switch or whatever. But it's like not atrociously bad other than bad ports. You know what I mean? Like it's for the most part, you're like, yeah, okay, it still looks good, like standing by its own merit, as long as the game has good art design and is like programmed all and stuff. Is like, yep, games can have the ability to look really good. And I mean, that was also true on the Wii U, but that had other things going against it.
I think the difference is that like when you look at, you know, because the GameCube, right, had the power disparity issue, and as well as I think just in general at the time.
Technically, a GameCube didn't have it was more a storage thing for GameCube because GameCube was more powerful than PS2.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, and like obviously capable of some very great graphics, like when looking at like something like Luigi's Mansion. But obviously it wasn't the powerhouse that like the Xbox was either, you know, and it's like
the Xbox
it existed in a weird you know, and also in general gamers' tastes were changing. That was when there was that move towards photorealism and gritty adult stuff and all these other reasons, right?
The gamers loved gray in 2004.
And if you remember, there's a lot of revisionist history that goes on with Wind Waker. People reacted very negatively to
people
Wind Waker.
Hated that game. Yeah.
And you know, so there are like market reasons you can kind of explain away why that didn't pop off quite as well. And you know, similar things with the N64 and yada, yada, yada. We don't need to go into a whole history lesson, but I feel like with the Wii, it connected because of a gimmick that created a market that didn't exist before. And then the Wii U was trying to like react to a market that already.
And the Wii U was like kind of trying to serve both. It was just trying to be like, we are also for the gamer, but really this is just a Wii sequel. And if it would have committed to either one of those things when they were making it, could have did a lot better, but it was just lost for most of its life.
I mean, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but I was talking to my sister at some point a couple years ago and we were walking around Walmart or something, and something about the Switch or the Wii came up. And I think she didn't understand that like the Switch was a successor console to the Wii and they were both Nintendo like she, you know, the whole timeline just has nothing to do with her. So when I mentioned that they're not selling Wiis anymore or that like Switch is going out, she's like, oh, is the Wii not doing well? As if like
it was still the
thing. Yeah, exactly. Like it's, you know, you buy a Wii and then that's the thing that lives on. Kind of like if you think of the iPhone as just like just a thing without upgrades, thinking of changing the thing or whatever.
It's like when you have like the parent that just calls it a Nintendo, right? It's like
exactly that.
Yeah, sure. Yes. But what I wanted to say about Switch before we get off this was just like the gimmick for the first time wasn't a gimmick, right? Because even like the DS and the 3DS, as successful as they were built around a gimmick, and it had its applications and it's connected with the market, and that's great. But like the Switch's whole thing is a gimmick, but it's just an insanely useful, novel thing. And that's why I think it doesn't matter that it's not as powerful as its competitors. Cause like for the first time, Nintendo's doing their own thing, but that doesn't mean just doing like a weird, wacky gimmick off on the side. It's like, no, like we've cornered handhelds, right? Like there's no other serious game company that deals in portable consoles.
You don't, whereas with the Wii, you don't have to think like, so with the Wii's gimmick, you were like, okay, well, how can we make this work in our game? I wonder. And then you're like, maybe we can't. And you know, like, can motion control work in every single game? Like, no. And or if it could, you know, it could.
Most companies didn't think of
it might be a bit forced. Yeah, exactly. So basically, that kind of thing where like it's really easy to just do the gimmick wrong. Whereas with the Switch, the whole gimmick is just like it's functionality, it's ease of use, it's just a nice thing.
It's like, you like video games? Cool, we got some.
Yeah. Because like the thing is, really every product ever has a gimmick, but it's like things are seen less as gimmicks when they become industry standards. Right. Where it's like our gimmick is that we're prettier again. It's like, oh yeah, we can get behind that. But this time it was like it's portable. You made games for portables before, and it's a prettier.
And that's the thing, right? But it's also not.
Yeah.
And his analog stick was like you can plug it into the TV. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like I was just starting to say, like an analog stick would have been a gimmick if other consoles didn't then have an analog stick. Like,
or it would
have moved this thing like around
because it literally is one. It's a gimmick.
Oh, exactly.
Everybody's using it. So
So now
they put it on the box, on the box of like this is a feature that our new thing does. That by definition is a gimmick.
I think going back to like the early days, like would the Switch outsell the Wii kind of thing. I think easy proof positive that there was at least a very good chance was like me and other people like me who had been like mildly in the video game space for a while, but not really. And then now are like super sold on it.
Right.
And for no other reason than like the Switch is cool and like the games on it, and all that kind of stuff. Like just we all know what the Switch has to offer. Yeah. And
plus, I mean, it serves like such a different market, not even in terms of like the way that a lot of people think of markets within games where it's like this serves younger players and casual it serves like a lifestyle literally. It's like, I don't have a lot of time, I can like take it. And it was like a big thing in the early days of the Switch where people were talking about like how successful it could be because it was really good for like celebrities, like touring
travel,
people that played sports and stuff, because they could literally play a AAA video game on their tour bus, or on the plane, like all the ads. Like people are like, I'm not going to do that, but literally there are so many people that's like, I wish I could play games.
My wife was showing me a product, so at some point we're going to go visit my parents in Belgium, and she was showing me this product that's like, oh look, it's an inflatable like bed for a baby, for you put it in an airplane seat, and it's kind of like a backwards chair, and you put them in there. And I was like, oh cool. And then in the back of the like little review video or something was the girl's husband just like playing Switch next to the baby in the airplane. And I was like, hey, you did it.
Like, this is me, this is what I need.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's true.
It's fun times.
Switch console.
Yeah. Good console indeed.
It's great.
One of the things in the middle of its life cycle, dude.
Yeah, it is
crazy.
So
how much stock you put in that? how real you think that statement is?
I think that they could get a few more years out of the Switch. I don't know about literally the middle. I don't know if we're going to have another like 5 years, right? But like I could see another 3.
I think it totally, like, they could mean so many things by that is all it is, like
exactly. They could do
because Apple never said iPhone 7 is in the middle of its life cycle. They just say like iPhone whatever. So like I mean we've talked about this on here before, but just the like, no, there's going to be a Pro, like no, there's going to be a next gen whatever, like it could all just be the same thing. It's just a question of marketing. Like no questions asked. The next thing is going to be just like the Switch, more or less, or at least a next thing is going to be just like the Switch, even if they do some additional like, we're going to do a docked only one just to have the option. They're not going to abandon the main Switch model. They'll also come back to that and more powerful. So whether that's within the Switch family line or called something different, they can spin that to mean whatever they want it to mean.
The biggest thing is that like they don't they don't really ever want to make consoles in that way where it's like segmented in like, all right, well, we're gonna have this console for this many years, and then we'll move on to the next one, and then they're like, we're gonna have this console for as long as it sells. And or until our developers get bored.
That's exactly what I was about to say too.
More out of it, and specifically their developers. They don't care about what third parties want. They're like, if Miyamoto's like, you know what I want? I want a 4 screen. They're like, all right, man, we're gonna make a new console.
All right, buddy, sure.
But making movies, yeah, like
I mean, I think what I interpret that to mean is that it's very much the play that they made with the Game Boy Advance, the DS, and then we saw it with the the 3DS and the Switch, where it's like, the Switch will literally be on the market for 5 more years. But it won't be the main console anymore for 5 more years, I would think. I think, AJ, you're probably spot on that, like, we get maybe another 2 or 3 years before we get a whiff of the Switch's successor that comes out, and everything that comes out on it is backwards compatible for a year or two, and until there's a game that can't be, and then they'll be like, well, now's the time, right? Like, there you go.
I think that basically with that sentence is it's saying like, don't bother stopping buying Switches and buying games and stuff now.
That's exactly what he wants to signal, right?
Yeah, right. Because I mean, one of the things in one of the other articles here, blah, 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 I'm gonna pull it up, is them talking about how to bring the millions of Switch owners to future Nintendo systems. I don't know if AJ, you were trying to transition.
No, I was just bringing that up.
But I mean, that's the thing, is like, how do they think about what that looks like? There's so many people here, and so making that just a super seamless transition is really important. And I think, I mean, Pete, to your point too, say in 2 years I could see as early as this year they actually finally do like a pro version or something like that. I definitely wouldn't see a like successor this year, but like maybe in the next couple of years or something like that. But nevertheless, if they do that, it's a lot stronger. They can easily keep the Switch on the market, have them live side by side, just like the PS4 and PS5 are, just like the Xbox One and Xbox Series X and stuff are.
Right.
And it's just the cheaper model. Like now it's $200 for a Switch, and then that many more people are going to buy it because they also know at some point if they want to upgrade, they can just like upgrade over pretty easily without too much rigmarole. And that's
like there are lots of very normal people, right? And that's always the thing that's important to point out, right? We meaning us on this podcast and you listening to us right now, are not normal. We are obsessive and addicted to this hobby,
meanings,
in this art form, and that is great. But like just anecdotally, right? A friend of mine is very much in the same situation that you are, Parker, where they are a lapsed gamer. They haven't had a console since the Wii, and they just got a Switch. And they had lived with a partner who had a PS4 and had played like 1 or 2 games in the last year or so. And they're entering this world where it's like, what? There's like 10, 15 games that just absolutely slap, and I can borrow them from people who already have the console or they're on sale. And like a lot of people buy consoles that way. There are a lot of people who come in at the end of a life cycle and are like, what I miss, and like,
I bring that up a lot whenever people, cause like, I've been past the Wii thing for a long time. That was a foregone conclusion for me year 2.
It would happen.
They're going to pass Wii. But PlayStation 2 was the thing that's like actually contentious for me.
Could they do it?
I think that they could. And
I agree.
It will be on the back of people like that. Like the thing for me, when I hear Nintendo say like, oh, we're halfway through life, I'm like, yeah, probably, because like we're 5 years in damn near, and they still haven't dropped the price a single time, not even once.
I mean, that's the thing. Like they built the thing smartly because I and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that they actually make a profit on the Switch, which is not the case for most hardware. Right, the business model of consoles
since launch.
Right,
always. That's crazy.
And you think about this,
more
right?
So post the revisions and stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
And there's a couple of things to think about with that too, right? Because usually you sell the console at a loss, you make the money on the software, so they're already making profit on it out the jump. The hardware is now 5 years old, so it's cheaper to produce.
Right.
So like their profit margin is actually getting better on it the longer it's on the market, which is insane. That's a great business model for them. They're going to want to be in the Switch business as long as they can.
And I mean, and to be honest, as long as they're keeping clients happy, basically, and especially now they're getting more into like just anecdotally, I'm seeing more and more families getting Switches and stuff like that. But so far, all the ones that I know, it is a family Switch. Like I don't know that I know anybody, at least with kids that are
because it's still $300.
Yeah, it's $300, or that even have like a Switch Lite for the kids or anything like that. Like there is a family Switch. But I mean, you know, for sure, if you have a family Switch right now, 3 years from now, there is little chance that if people are still playing that people don't have Switch Lites in that family, or you know what I mean, like, or as even the kids just regular are turning Switches. Like 11, exactly, yeah. Especially if there's price drops and stuff like that, like that's the thing that's gonna really propel it, you know.
If it's wild that they can still play that card. Yes, when you think about it, right? Like at any moment they could do that, and sales will spike.
At this point, and I looked it up because I was like having this conversation with somebody about the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 had like 3 price drops at this point.
It was like $100 at this point, maybe. Maybe
it was like 150. It was like
it was more than that, but it came down quite a bit.
But yeah, like because it launched at like 200 and then they dropped it down like $25 and another $25 or something like that. Switch still hasn't had that. Like the closest that they come to that is they'll during Black Friday you might get Mario Kart for the 300. You might get that bundled in for 300. And for the first 3 years or so, they would bundle in Mario Kart and you're still paying for Mario Kart. Like that's crazy.
It wasn't even a better deal.
It was just like, we'll see. We'll put it in the box for you. You know?
Like, you want a game, right? You nerd. Come on.
Okay, so I looked up the PS2. It launched at $300.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. It was $300, and then
and so it was
probably $3 to $250 to $2.
Yeah,
it was $300 to $200 2 years later, and then to $180 a year later, $150 a year later, and then by 6 years in it was $130, and then by 9 years in it was $100. So by the end, at that point, it's still like a lot of its sales still
it's
from
sold like at least
2008 onwards.
It sold like 30% of its lifetime sales during that period.
It's important to point out there's a regional element to that as well. In Brazil, the PS2 was the console for many, many years. And I don't quite understand. I don't know the reason why offhand. It's been a while since I remember reading about this, but
they're super expensive in Brazil.
There's a markup issue, and it made the PS3 like just, you know,
it was
already expensive.
I'm not paying rent. I'm not paying 3 months rent on this console.
This is like 3 car payments. What are you doing? So like the PS2 remained extremely popular in parts of South America as well, outside of Brazil. And like FIFA sold crazy there and everything. So that kept it on the market. I think they only stopped production of PS2s like in the ramp up to the PS4.
Yeah, it was like 2014 or something like that.
Yeah, which is insane, right? Like that's extremely abnormal. And the Switch has none of those caveats, and they could still do a price cut. So, I mean,
because that's the only caveat that it needs. It has 2 caveats. They can do a price cut. People are getting babies are getting older. So eventually you'll get to a point where it's like, you're old enough to have your own Switch.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Because think about it. There are kids that were born the year this came out that might get a Switch for Christmas this year.
I am literally in that position where I bought my oldest niece a Switch. My youngest niece is 1, you know, but like when she's like 8, I might buy her a Switch. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, honestly, like, exactly that. Like I've definitely got friends that have just kids within that age range of like 5 to 9 or whatever, none of whom have their own Switches, but especially a Switch Lite I could see in the realm of the next 3 years, especially by the time that a new console comes out. You know, if it's a Switch revision, or not a Switch revision, but a Switch like Successor or something like that, and then the parents are like, I really do like playing these games and they are pretty nice to look at or something, I don't know, whatever. If they're still invested at that point, which like chances are they are, because at that point it becomes a family thing of like, what's the game we're playing or whatever. then they would upgrade, and then they could give their one Switch to one of the kids, but then like what do they do with the other kids? Like that's how my sister and I each had a laptop at the same time. Like there was never a time where she had one and then I didn't also have one, that something like that. So
and another interesting thing is the console below the PS2 is of course the Nintendo DS, which also went through multiple revisions and price cuts. And I mean, yeah, it's great because you think about it, right? If they cut the price of both the base unit and Switch Lite, a discounted Switch Lite would be like dirt cheap. Like if they could sell the Switch Lite for like $150, they'll sell another couple million of those like clockwork.
I mean, it's crazy to think as we're talking about this, I'm just realizing it more that the Switch really is, especially in the family demographic. Like for us, it's really useful that you can dock it or take it handheld, and it's just like that's useful for me as an individual, and that's nice, and I could play with some friends if they come over or whatever. But like think as a family, there has never been a console that's been a family oriented thing and an individual oriented thing at the same time in that same way. You know what I mean?
You literally have those moments where the kids are playing on the TV and dad's like, yo, I want to watch sports ball. And the kid's like, but I'm playing Mario Kart with my friends. And it's like, all right, undock it.
Yep.
And that's the thing, right? Back in the day, that was a conversation. And then now it's like, oh, you want to use the TV? Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Undock.
I'll go in my room and plug it on that dock.
Yeah, exactly.
So this question was from the that whole the Nintendo financial results and things. And so David Gibson reported that they were asked, so the question, 98 million playing users, how does that compare to the Wii? Because that is crazy that there's 98 million playing users in the last year, because I've seen tweets. I saw a tweet this week that people were like, the Switch, that console that like you're obsessed with for 3 weeks and then you don't touch for 3 months.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And I was like, I mean, I guess for some people I could see that being a thing. Like, sure. But then like all the comments for literally so toxic.
Those people that are like that are the people that care that much about like the tech specs. Whereas I can't stand to look at jaggies. Ew.
Well, I don't know. That's like such a nothing statement too, right? Because it's like you can say that about like I own all three like consoles. That with my PlayStation 5 and Series X. I have not. Well, I play my Series X a little bit more, but I have legitimately not played my PlayStation 5 like for any amount of time or months. Right, and it's like like.
But that's a personal thing,
Yeah, right, exactly. And it comes down to what your tastes are and like what software is most appealing to you at any given moment.
Exactly, like what's out at the moment. Like as soon as there's a game that's coming out that's like that's only on PS5 and Age is like I want to play that game, then like for sure, at that point it'll happen. Yeah,
and that like that's what those will be, right? It'll be like everybody has. If you have multiple consoles and you have responsibilities on any level, you have that console that's like I'm coming to this more often than I'm coming to my other consoles. I'll play my other consoles when they're necessary, like
when the mood strikes.
I didn't buy every console to be like I'm going to give all my consoles equal time and that means that's their I'm like no, I bought for consoles for when I feel like playing or when there's a game on it that I want to play in this moment, and that's the value of it. It just so happens for me Switch is the one that I literally play at least a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting. Like when you have all three of them, at least for me, like I don't intentionally divide my time in any way. It's literally just me about whatever excites me at the moment. Exactly. And like when all of the companies like were doing their little breakdowns at the end of the year, right? Like I played my Switch less this year than I have any year prior, but I also went through like weird periods where it was like, okay, at this part of the year, I only like literally was only touching my PlayStation. Then I only touched Xbox, and then I only touched my Switch, and then I only touched Xbox again. And it's just like, a healthy gaming appetite is going to be diverse, y'all. You know, and it's like there's no room for platform warriors anymore, right? They're all good.
It's so dumb. Like
just play the games.
Yeah, just play the games you want to play and don't what you don't. Like
play what you want to play. Yep. Play what you want to play. Yeah. Agreed. I'm gonna so to finish reading the question too. So 98 million playing users. How does that compare to Wii? And then the answer was it is important KPI and we find it meaningful plus other KPIs, but versus Wii, the functions of Switch are very different. So KPIs, by the way, is performance indicators. So just like a
key
metric,
performance indicators.
a metric that they want to keep track of. So comparison is not meaningful. Okay, let me reread that. It's an important key performance indicator, and we find it meaningful plus other key performance indicators, but versus Wii, the functions of Switch are very different. So comparison is not meaningful. Okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so basically what they're saying is that it's relevant that there are 98 million unique playing users. That is a good KPI for them, but because the Switch and the Wii are so functionally different, comparing the two is not valuable.
Because
and additionally,
Wii became like a board game where it's like, we got everybody together, let's play Wii Sports.
Right, exactly.
And Switch is also, I'm going to play in my room under my
Switch is meant to be a console you interact with like every day. You know?
And then so a follow-up question on that was, how are you thinking about the 98 million versus next console? And then the answer was, into the 6th year of the Switch, we are maintaining momentum. We are looking at how to expand and grow this 100 million users, leading into next gen device. Sounds like next gen device will be backwards compatible. Which
that was another thing that
would be the stupidest thing for it to not. Yeah, agreed, like, for sure.
The fact that they said from jump, like pretty much day one, that NVIDIA was going to be their partner for the next 10 years. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, of course.
I think that's one of those things, though. It's like the same reason that the GTA 6 announcement was news today, where it's like, I think it is a foregone conclusion, but I think like when you look at the last couple generations, it kind of hasn't been. Like backwards compatibility was a foregone conclusion with Nintendo, and then on the Switch it didn't happen, right? And like
I would say that it's more of a foregone conclusion than it ever has been, because on the home console front, it really never was. Because like if you think like there was the NES to the SNES, then that wasn't, and then N64 wasn't playing any of those games. And then GameCube wasn't playing any of that. And then the Wii was the first time that it have.
And then the Wii U was also
and
that.
And then the Wii U was that. But now we're at the point where it's less of a question of like, because a lot of the reason why, obviously with Nintendo consoles is format. It's like, the cartridges are different. I don't know what to tell you. They're like, this disc, it's way too small. It's not, like stuff like that. But now, or like later on in its life, it became more of a thing of like, all right, well, what's the architecture for the chipset? And for a long time, everybody was on PowerPC, and then they eventually left off of PowerPC, and now switches on ARM. And it was like, okay, are they going to like stay on ARM? And from the beginning, they said that they were going to stay on ARM because NVIDIA was going to be their partner. And something that's big on like NVIDIA's like list, and what a lot of different chip makers talk about, is like how good they are at forward compatibility from the jump, because it's like, well, this is basically the same thing, it's just a better version of the same thing. So it has that thing of like what PlayStation's solution is, where it's like, we're just so powerful, so much more powerful than our other thing, that we're able to emulate our other thing. It has that being that much more powerful, but also being basically the same chipset. So that's why it's always been a thing where it's like, it's definitely going to be backwards compatible for me. The only real question is like, will it be that much more powerful than all of their other stuff to be able to have the PlayStation solution of like, well, we're going to emulate it, and it's going to be that much more powerful than Wii U, so it can emulate Wii U or whatever,
I have to think it probably will, just because I mean the current Switch is very underpowered by modern standards, but it's still a pretty dang strong piece of tech. So the idea that like whatever its successor will be won't be like leaps and bounds more powerful just because of how much tech has advanced in the 5 years since because you think about it, it was outdated when they made it, right? So it's like, it's really more like 7
like most of their consoles.
Right. So the idea that like whatever they make won't be state of the art, but even if it's state of the art a couple years ago, it'll be a huge increase from the Switch.
I mean, well, the other thing
they need to
is
increase it that much to make it a lot more impressive, because it's already pretty dang good.
Because but it also depends on like what they prioritize, because like the Switch by like if you're talking about performance, like for like how like impressive it is visually and like how smooth the games run and stuff like that, it was outdated, but it was the most efficient console by a mile, you know? So it really depends on what their priorities are. Like, are they going to double down on efficiency, which on some level means power is going to increase, because if you're more efficient with more powerful, then you get a lot more out of it. But if they double down on power and it's even a little bit efficient, you know, it's going to be more powerful or look more powerful than if they double down on efficiency and not so much on power.
If they can get me a Switch where the base FPS on every game is 60 instead of 30,
I don't know if that's going to happen.
but eventually it does, right? And that's the thing. It's like, how long is it between now and the successor? And that's a big question, because like the longer they're able to draw this generation out, the cheaper the technology required to make something that's a lot, and again, a lot beefier than the Switch, right? Because, you know, like if they're not going to try to like chase photorealism and they're going to continue to be like, hey, like we do things that are stylized and that have a, you know, a different approach, like you can focus more on fidelity than, you know, because like it doesn't need to be 4K, right? It doesn't need to be any of those other kinds of things, right? Especially if it's targeting a handheld screen as part of the SKU, like that makes no sense, right? Like
it doesn't need to be 4K, but marketing wise, do they feel like it needs to be 4K is a question for sure. You know, like
I feel like they might.
And I don't.
Like the thing is,
at least
historically, I don't think. Yeah, right. Historically, I don't know that would be the case, but it does feel like that's kind of like, how do we justify to people that this is better? Like 4K, it's not a buzzword, but it is also a buzzword at the same time.
I'll tell you what, it justifies them making the games cost more.
That also true.
And they care about that, I bet.
But also the other thing is, like, I think the main reason why they're not, and I don't think they ever really will be feeds or speeds, you know, like that whole thing, is because they didn't really see themselves as competitors with the other console manufacturers, and I still don't think they do. But who they do look at as a competitor is Apple, and they talk about Apple a lot. If every phone that they have targets a certain resolution, which they don't even target 4K, you know, but they'll target the specs that are common with people when it's like, well, my iPad is this resolution. You know?
I don't know that it doesn't matter necessarily. They wouldn't be thinking of like, how do we market this against the PS5 or Xbox Series X, but how do we market this against the Switch itself? You know, like why is this a valuable upgrade or whatever?
I think it's less about marketing against the hardware and it's more against marketing against the software, actually. Because I think that the thing is, I don't think Nintendo has to compete with Xbox or PlayStation or anybody on a technical level when it comes to like, you know, again, like photorealism or anything like that. But I will say, as someone who has spent the last, you know, almost I've spent a lot of time now with these next gen consoles. They're not new to me anymore. I feel very, very spoiled by the load times, by features like quick resume, by things like what's the thing that Xbox calls it for where they up-res the games? Smart delivery. All of those kinds of things. I think those are the things that are harder and harder to ignore, where it's like, hey, like
things that Nintendo likes for sure.
Yeah, like I'm not asking the games to look as good, but like, you know, I think that like
quick resume on the Switch would be insane. Like that would be ridiculous.
And that would be a huge quality of life thing, right? And like
that, because that fits with like the value of it, where it's like
additionally. I mean, we're going to get to this in a little bit, but whenever we talk about Pokemon, I'm just jumping the gun on this part of it. Is like, I tweeted this out the other day, but as I've been playing Pokemon, I am like, graphics look fine enough. They're not like great or anything like that, you know, blah, blah, whatever. But the fact that it is like not trying to push it too hard and stuff means that, like, seriously, load times between areas, load times for the game, load time for like, if I fast travel within the same area is like instant, which is amazing. Like, and so I remember I played Divinity Original Sin, and that game is like normally fairly power intensive. And the way that they did it was like they also prioritized load times, which I appreciated. But like, as you fast travel somewhere, it just like the textures just slowly, it's super blocky at first, or not blocky, but just like everything just pops in. It's like top down or whatever. So it's less pop in of elements and more pop in of textures. And I was like, I don't care like that. I way prefer that than having to wait forever, which if we think back to Breath of the Wild and compare Pokemon Legends Arceus, Breath of the Wild and stuff, there was a lot of load times. Like I didn't think about it at the time because I just had a good old time playing it. But the couple of times I've been back to it, it's like, no, they really wanted to make sure that it looked as good as it could everywhere, which is great. But you were waiting a lot.
But that's the thing, right? Is now, then that used to be true for everybody, right? Yep. Like load times were pretty much the same on every console, even though the PS4 and Xbox were a lot more powerful. Like you were still sitting and waiting, right? But now it's like, I don't experience load screens on any other platform than Switch anymore, right? Like that makes the Switch look bad, right. And like when you talk about how efficient Pokemon is with those bad environments, think about how good something like Spider-Man Miles Morales looks like, and you can fast travel in the same amount of time, right? And there's no pop in, there's none of those problems.
And even though like that's more, and they talk about it a lot, where that's because of the SSD more so than it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing.
Powerful the console is.
A Switch with an SSD and a little bit more storage and better resolution. Like, I don't really think we need that much to make it a decidedly better next gen experience.
Right.
And that's exciting, you know?
Merc in the chat said, quick resume is game changing, and I don't know if the pun was intended, but I love it so much.
Justin said technically it has an SSD. It doesn't have it. SSDs are different, but yeah, it does use flash storage. But SSDs are like it's multiple things of flash storage and all that nonsense. It's not a one-to-one. It's not as fast because of how it works versus how SSDs work.
Technically, and how an SSD.
and like how the whole experience is built around the SSD, because you could put an SSD in a PlayStation 4. But it's not going to run off of it in the same way that it will on a PlayStation 5.
Yeah, and like those are the things about those consoles that I think make the bigger difference than anything. Like, yeah, they look better. That's great. Like, but the quality of life stuff is hard to ignore.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like we talk about things.
The bus speeds thing Justin just said. He said the speed is not due to it being an SSD. It's due to bus speeds. Yeah.
Alec got it. Super silly dad. That's SSD. That's me. Good job, Alec. So yeah, but I mean, like that's as far as I'd guess, that's the only reason we don't have folders yet is because they're like, it'll take a little longer to load. Like probably don't do folders there.
I think it's that, but I think
those kinds of things.
There's just a lot of stuff that they're being pretty, the way that I see it anyway, pretty upfront with like what they're prioritizing. That is the biggest thing. It's like, do we care what this game looks like, or do we care that we can change the battle system a little bit more if we are, the way that Pokemon pop up in the overworld and they're shiny, that type of stuff. And Switch kind of did that from the get-go with the OS, where it's like, oh, we don't have all this extra stuff, but like it's super smooth to go from one game to the next game.
Yeah.
Everything is that cheap, fast, good slide.
Yeah. And so that's, I mean, to Pete's point and to the whole thing we've been saying is that like, as we get into the next gen, they can afford to do more of the, bells and whistles just because the other parts will just,
because they're allowed more headroom. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And basically,
nice.
all you really need to do is just raise the ceiling of what it's capable of. You know, like the base experience is already great.
Yeah. I mean, and especially because like even with the individual games themselves and the whole, like most of the first party stuff has dynamic resolution and like all this stuff that like, even if we just get some kind of Switch Pro or something like that in the next year or two, that elongates the lifespan longer than it would normally, because for what it's worth, to go back to the original prompt, no, I think if we're talking about just the 2017 strength Switch, like off of the, basically what we have right now, I don't think it can last on the market as the front runner standalone thing for the front runner games much longer than like the next 2 years. And then, I mean, but it very well could, because they've been doing a great job also. So like
the thing that I think
think of how long the SNES lasted. That's the
Game Boy.
Yeah, the Game Boy. Yeah.
But I mean, even with that, like there was a somewhat substantial upgrade of the Game Boy Color, that like it at least made it feel like fresh in a way that I think that's the important part, is like, can stuff feel fresh still?
I think that software
very well could. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I'm going to move us on to some of the other topics so we can keep getting into it. But yeah, we found out a lot more about just sales numbers in general, and we're not going to get into all of them because there's just a whole bunch of numbers. But some of the standout ones are, as I put it in my notes, Metroid Dread is selling great. So look, it's so great. No, yeah, Metroid Dread had 2.74 million October through December. So probably somewhere in the 3 million vicinity now-ish, maybe not, but at least coming up on it,
That's good.
And that's nice. What do we think?
I'm sure they're happy with that. I think something that a lot of people don't necessarily realize about Metroid is that even though I think Nintendo fans think of it as like a marquee franchise, it's never resonated that way sales wise. So the fact, like, this is gotta be the best-selling Metroid.
For sure. I think. I mean, it's not yet, but you mean when it's all said and done?
Yeah. Long term, over the cycle of I think
absolutely
it's inevitable. This will be the best-selling Metroid.
Yeah, definitely.
The only thing that could hold it back from that status is if it doesn't break it within the next 3 months. So by, when we find out the results for the rest of the fiscal year, so through March 31st, if it hasn't cracked above Prime then, and then never sells 1 million within a single year again, then we might never know because they kind of stop reporting on some of that stuff. Sometimes we still find it, like, it slips through the cracks sometimes. But yeah, that
they stop reporting when it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Like if it's 10 years later it sold 1 million more, they're like, we're not reporting that. But if it sold 1 million in that year, they're like, yeah, it's there.
Yeah, because that's one of their charts is always their million seller Nintendo first party titles. And so like this year that included Game Builder Garage and some other newer ones. But like even if a newer one doesn't show up on there, then we just might not know,
I think the thing that's interesting too is it'll probably sell again when Prime 4 comes out, right? 100%. Like it has opportunities to have surges again organically.
Yep.
So I think it'll.
And I mean, just good word of mouth and those kinds of things. Like it's, like at this point, Fire Emblem Three Houses is still selling. It's not selling super fast, but like there's,
people are still buying the video game.
Yeah, exactly. Because the three of us will be like, hey, you should play that game. It's a fun time, and then they'll play it because we have mind control powers.
People are buying new Switches every day. That's the thing,
It's true. Yep. And you never know what things that they will enjoy. So yeah, that's one of the numbers that came from there. Otherwise, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl sold just shy of 14 million, which is a lot.
Pokemon things doing Pokemon things, man.
It truly is so much for a game that I kind of wish I wasn't one of those 14 million.
Yeah, game's not great.
It's very okay.
Yeah.
It's still very interesting to me that they put it out so close to Arceus because it would have sold more if Arceus just came out later.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, and I wonder what the sales trajectory of that one is because like even Let's Go, like I can definitely like, I mean, I enjoyed Let's Go. I had a good time with it.
Sure.
And it seemed like it sold a lot right at the beginning and then, it keeps selling well enough, but not like, amazing.
It's not making leaps and bounds. It's not Mario Kart.
Right. It was, yeah, exactly. For the most part, it just kind of like, it was very front loaded. But I can still recommend that to somebody today, a specific like kids, especially or whatever. Like I can recommend Let's Go. I don't think honestly, even the original thing with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl was like, I could probably recommend this to somebody who hasn't played a Pokemon game, like an adult who hasn't played a Pokemon game before. And I'm like, I don't know that I would anymore, honestly. Like, I think what I would do is just be like, honestly, play Legends Arceus. Because like
at this point, there's 3 other Pokemon games. There are 3 other options on Switch. And I'm like, I feel like it's probably the last one I would recommend, frankly.
Yeah, because there's so many people that like for a long time, I was like, oh, well, if you're looking for a traditional Pokemon experience, I'll probably start recommending that. But in hindsight, I've seen a lot of people go back to Sword and Shield and be like, I like this game way more than Brilliant Diamond. Like this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you were a lapsed fan and you want a very traditional experience, I'd say go have fun with Sword and Shield. If you're open to something new, I mean, yeah,
Arceus.
like Arceus is the jam, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would you play anything else right now?
Yeah, I think the Sword and Shield thing is that like there would be, even though it doesn't have the whole, regional or the whole national decks and stuff, like it is a little bit overwhelming in terms of content, but at the same time, it's kind of not, because the story mode's like just do some stuff and like it tells you what's super effective and stuff. So yeah,
It walks you through it enough.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. It still
I
has
don't think
that
there's a
Pokemon
Pokemon
thing where
game
you
that's
can-
been made that's not
Yeah,
new
it's-
player friendly.
It has
Yeah.
the Pokemon thing of like the base level is super simple, and really all you need is the base level. You can still play Sword and Shield, just mash and flamethrower. That's your strongest attack.
pretty much.
Mash that, and you'll probably get through it. But if you do want a bit more out of it, you can go as deep as you want, and then
Yeah, for
go
sure.
from there. Brilliant Diamond doesn't really have that.
No. Yeah.
It's just the surface level, and then everything else that people want out of it, like
Mhm.
the more casual players and stuff, the campaign and stuff like that, it's not
Mhm.
good. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Some other notable things that came out of this. Let's see. Mario Party Superstars sold 5.5 million, which that came
Got some
so much
give me some
better than
DLC.
Super Mario Party. Yes, I know. Seriously. Side note. Okay, I listened to a little bit of Ashley and I were driving earlier today, and she put on Nintendo Voice Chat. Because I like Nintendo Voice Chat. It's nice. One of like their main topic was how come we haven't seen Nintendo Direct yet? And
Oh my god.
that just struck me really funny for some reason, because I'm like, haven't we all kind of agreed that it's just going to happen when it's going to happen at this point? Like I thought that was a general.
I don't think
consensus.
anybody will ever agree on that. Ever.
No, I think we have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, like
yeah.
us and my co-hosts over on my podcast, we are
Right.
all of the same mind that
Right.
at this
But
point
I mean
they
the
just
community.
they happen.
Like,
Yeah,
the community
if we
is
get to the-
always looking
Yeah.
for the new advertisement party.
I mean,
Like,
I'm very excited when one gets announced, but for
yeah,
me,
if it happens,
if-
it happens. Cool.
if we get to the end of March and there hasn't been a direct, then I'll be asking, like, where is the Nintendo Direct? Because I would
At that point it will seem
now.
odd.
Yes,
Mhm.
But it's
still,
also
I
like
feel-
I don't know
Wait for
because
E3, I guess.
yeah,
I mean,
that's the other
non-E3
thing.
E3.
Is
Yeah.
yeah, right. Like it won't be E3, but like the Summer Games Fest season, whatever the fuck we're calling it.
Oh
Yep.
no,
Oh,
No, I was
dang.
so good last week. No, Jeff Keighley, why?
Who knew that all it took to get the F word out of Pete was Parker being here? I would never.
It's Parker's
I
fault.
should have
Yeah,
taken note of
clearly.
when we started recording, so I would have any kind
Oh,
of clue
no.
how far into- Oh,
It's
not that
roughly
big
an
a deal. I'll
hour
find it.
in.
We got it. Rick said, "No, my tender ears."
I'm so sorry. Anyway, I'm gonna try to recover from that
You
moment.
got this. You got it.
Because Arceus just dropped and it's a huge hit and Kirby's imminent, right? That's the next thing to look forward
Yeah.
to. It's like, why not wait for that
Yeah.
period? If you don't have anything that's like coming in the next couple months that you need to start gassing people up
Right.
for, all
Mhm.
you're going to do by dropping a direct now rather than in 2 months from now is make people wait longer for a thing that they're like, I want this now, right? Let
Yeah,
people focus on
exactly.
the game that's really hot right now.
Mhm.
I mean, that said, I would anticipate, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see one in the next, like, in like 2 weeks onwards, somewhere in that kind of, like, somewhere in February. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised. But I just don't feel like it's worth wondering about. It's
Yeah.
fun to talk about in this regard because, like, talking about the why are we wondering about it feels more fun somehow. But just feels like a funny thing. In any case, that was a bit of an aside. But I did, going back to Mario Party Superstars versus Super Mario Party. I hope that in the end. Oh no, that was the thing. I hope there's DLC there, like you said, because
Yeah.
I want to play that game.
More
but I-
boards.
Yeah,
I just
like
want more
Game
boards.
Yeah.
More
yes.
boards, more games.
Yes.
That's it.
Put Diddy Kong in the game. Stop
And
being
yeah,
dumb.
characters, like, honestly,
Sure.
I had a whole script of things for a video that we were going to do that we didn't end up doing, that was talking about Mario Party Superstars, and it's just like a lot of just little things that would be nice to add in there, just roll out of content. But
Just sell me
we'll
a
see what
season
happens.
pass already.
Yes.
You know?
It's true.
Yeah. So there you go. Otherwise, yeah, just hitting the highlights. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe still selling great. New Horizons still selling great. Those are both just doing good. Actually, I'm curious how New Horizons sold this, like with the DLC timing as compared to other times,
yeah.
I haven't gone. I don't know what the best place to look for that would be, because I feel like there's probably a pretty good uptick with it, because there was an element of like New Horizons kind of seemed like they sold the lion's share of people on Animal Crossing all at once, and then seemed like it was going to remain a little more stagnant in general.
It was still selling 5 million a quarter. Exactly, that's still pretty good.
Exactly. So, but that I think
you want to call that stagnant? It's twice as much as Metroid Dread, which was their biggest game of last year.
Well, you're not wrong. But yeah, I mean, especially with the DLC, I feel like that helps, push it a lot in that regard.
They do actually have a little graphic here where they have an uptick in their quarterly digital sales trends, and it shows that they're attributing the growth to Animal Crossing, Kirby Fighters 2, and the expansion pack for NSO.
Yep. Yeah, Kirby Fighter 2. Everybody's there for that.
Being there is wild.
Does anyone play that game? What?
They need to just play Smash.
I mean, it must have microtransactions, right?
It's way free better to play. Kirby Fighter.
Yep.
Granted, Kirby sucks in Smash, though.
But yeah, it is. All that said, it's interesting. So, well, I guess we'll get to one of the other things. Pokemon Legends Arceus also sold some members. But the thing I was going to say first, at this point, I feel like the top 10 is relatively firmly stuck where it is. Like, not completely. There's definitely stuff that's going to come in and out of it, but way more so than like
Splatoon got yeeted out of the top 10.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think more and more like,
I think the top 8 is solidified. No, not even that. I think the top like 4. It's like, but everything below that, I think is going to shift in and out.
Yeah, I don't think there's another Animal Crossing. I don't think there's another game that's good. Again, except Breath of the Wild 2.
Right.
Well, actually, and maybe Pokemon Legends Arceus. So who's to say?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Pokemon Legends Arceus, second fastest selling game on the Switch with 6.5 million in a week, which is a lot. I said that to Ashley earlier. I was like, so yeah, Legends Arceus sold 6.5 million in the week, and she was like, wow. And I was like, she would have no like reference point for that at all. I was like, that was just useless information.
Like, is that good? Or
I guess. Which I mean, she was like, that's a lot of people, obviously.
Yeah, it could be a good match, because like if you think like if an album sold 6 million copies in a week, people would be like, oh shoot, like that's a lot in a week.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I guess from there, was there anything else from this stuff that you guys wanted to talk about? I think that's
not particularly.
The only thing I was going to bring up was that Splatoon 2 is gone. Rip. Hate to see it.
Yep. Hate to see it.
Everybody's waiting for Splatoon 3 now. That's the problem. You announce the next game. Nobody wants to buy the last one now. Dead game.
Actually, that said, Splatoon 2 isn't even in the million sellers for
like it didn't sell another million. Yeah.
I'm serious. Once that trailer came out, everyone's like, "Oh wait."
It's like, 100%. Yeah. I mean, even before the trailer, like I think, so my friend Mitch that I've mentioned on here a bunch of times,
he's also been on here.
I remember he has. I remember I asked him a couple of years, like 3 years ago, maybe or so. So like pretty early on in the Switch lifespan, but 2019 maybe. I was like, do you think you would play Splatoon 2? And he was like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it looks like it would be pretty fun, but I don't want to play it now. It's, it's probably like a dead game. And like, I'd want to wait until a new one comes out to do it. And I was like, I mean, there's definitely a lot of people still playing it.
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
Yeah, probably not though. Even then, I think there's
the
people
problem with games like that is a lot of people are playing Splatoon 2 still, like a lot. But you're not going to want to play with them because
they're all sweaty.
They are sweaty.
They're going to just demolish your spirit.
Yeah, you are not going to have fun.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, I think, Splatoon 3 trailer, definitely, that was the nail in the coffin. But even before that, I think, there's people that would have had a harder time getting into
That's an old game. It's 5 years old.
Yep. And especially with like, kind of, an online multiplayer, keep up with the meta sort of a game, I guess. That's a harder sell, not right off the bat, where you can play against 10-year-olds that don't know what they're doing yet.
Yep.
All right. So the Legends Arceus selling great. And
it's true.
Let's just do it.
Surprising no one
about this game. Yeah.
Nah, man, this game dead in the water. Game sucks.
So here's some thoughts.
Dead game.
Number one, here's some things that I think we were at least minorly wrong about Legends Arceus. I remembered more of them earlier in the week and I'm forgetting them. But number one, the size of the world, definitely, like, it's not Breath of the Wild. It's not like the biggest thing in the world, but it is quite large. Like,
it's bigger than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I don't think we were wrong about that. Nothing that I said. I didn't think that it was going to be like small.
No, I mean, I didn't think it was going to be small, but like, I think also the way it's okay. Well, I'm just going to be thrown. I have had so many thoughts, and they're just going to come out just randomly. Number one,
come baby.
Let all the pins just
so much. All these pins. I'm picking them up one at a time. I'm showing you the pin, and then I'm like, I've got 5 more pins somewhere in my pin.
Look at my pin collection.
Oh, suddenly all these pins are like, I'm thinking like the other kind of pin that you like pin to yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, like the nice lenticulars.
Yeah.
When you said it's like badges, like your Pokemon badges, you know?
True. There's none of those in this game. Though.
Gotta love it.
Full circle, baby.
One. Are you spoilers? I thought there was going to be some.
I thought I was going to get a badge at the end.
So for context of where I'm in the second area, but I've pretty much like maxed out the first area that I can get to so far, and hasn't like it's transitioned into later bits. Maybe if anything like that happens, which it kind of does earlier on, like some of the alphas will be different alphas the more you've kind of done in that area or something like that. But I'm in the second area, but like 20 hours in, more or less. So having a good old time. The thing that I was going to say that like this and Breath of the Wild.
That's wild.
Yeah. I want to just real quick. One of the regular listeners of my podcast, Olaf in the Discord, we were talking earlier, and he was telling me that he is level 6 in the whatever the ranking is. Over 20 hours in, has still not left the first area.
Oh my!
I was like, buddy, for me, move on. Get
Please
to the next.
Play the game.
I very well like. Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'll just go ahead and go to the next area at this point. But I'm also maybe I'm 5th back. I can up to level 65. So I don't know if that's 6th or 5th.
I think that's 6.
Okay. So yeah,
so you're doing the same thing,
pretty much the same as I have at this point, and it's been oh man, I have so many things. I tried to climb a mountain on Weird Deer, and there was like one little peak thing that it was totally fine, and I climbed it, and I was like, look at this nice vista, and then I turned around, I was like, oh, there's another little peak just kind of right next to me, and so I kind of tried to climb that a little bit, and this was my first experience of this happening. And like kind of slipped off, and there was nowhere that had. Everything was too steep or whatever on the other side. So I fell all the way down and blacked out.
Oh, yeah, right.
And lost a bunch of items, literally just because the geography was dumb. Or not the geography, but
or you went where you weren't supposed to go because you're supposed to get some more. You're supposed to advance the game, buddy, and get some more stuff before you try climbing mountains.
I think this one, for what it's worth,
satchel for you, dude. It's all right.
Thank you so much. That's all I've ever wanted.
No problem.
That's the only way I lost a satchel too. My only blackout in the game so far is accidentally leaping off of a cliff and just dying.
Most of my deaths are me being like, I could jump off of that, and the game being like, nah, you can't.
Yeah.
So
I can fly now though, so I'm good.
True,
now I'm the master of the skies.
Look at you go.
Same.
I cannot.
Well, you can fall with style. You can't really.
Yeah, there you go. So it's something that this game is doing really well. That also, like Breath of the Wild did really well, but I don't think other open world games necessarily all think about or nail is the whole like if I'm standing in a location, there is something within eyesight in any direction that's gonna catch my eye. Like that's I think
it's usually a Pokemon.
I mean, it's usually a Pokemon or like, tumblestones or something, or like shiny tumblestones where there's Stardust in it or something like that. But that's something that like, it's so simple, like not easy by any means to like design that and go stand in every spot. Probably like, I can imagine they had a QA person literally do that and like walk around and be like, is there ever any point where you just can't see anything interesting? And if so, just add something in, you know what I mean? But like that in and of itself that's the way that you do the get off the track for 2 hours kind of a thing, is just that there's just something, so like Ashley didn't even get through the tutorial bit before she got off the track and like couldn't didn't have her own crafting kit yet to do stuff, but things just kept attracting her attention. And I was like, this is great. Like, that's so good.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised.
That's 100% how I play too.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that because I think the game, from like watching like Bob specifically play the game, it's like so much of this game's value feels like informed by how much you care about what the game wants you to do, right? Because like if you don't want to get like, oh, there's a big Bidoof, like if you don't care about the big Bidoof, you're just going to stay on the path that they want you to be on in terms of like the story. Yeah, exactly. And if you're playing the game like based off of like this objective wants me to do that, you're going to hate the game. I promise you. I promise you will hate the game if you were playing the game the way that the game is telling you directly to play it. I guarantee you will hate it.
I mean, it's the whole like the side quests have to be the main quest and the main quest has to be the side quest kind of a thing. Like that's, I haven't played The Witcher 3 yet. I plan to. I've got the physical copy borrowed from my friend Mitch right over there. He's not over there. The physical copy is. He's not just hiding in the corner.
Don't know that. You don't know that. He probably has a high stealth.
He probably does. But so all that said, like I remember hearing about that game that like, and I mean Breath of the Wild too, but like specifically the side quests in that game are just the better content, like the better written content, the better fleshed out content. So you want to do those because it's just like beneficial to do them. Whereas in, you know, a lot of other games, it's just like a bunch of fetch quests and stuff that's really annoying.
Yeah.
And that even so, like, you know, I'd say there are requests in Legend Arceus. And I wouldn't even necessarily say those are the side quests. I feel like the side quest is the world. But also the requests are also side quests and they're pretty good. Like I think genuinely they're pretty different. They lead you towards different things, like towards a shiny or towards a bigger Pokemon, Weasel and all that stuff.
They encourage you to play the game in a way you wouldn't normally play, which I think is good, right? It's like, it's the same reason that like achievements or trophies are satisfying, where it's like, oh yeah, there's a lot here that I might not have realized if I didn't take the time to engage with these things. But I also think that I really like the way that they facilitate story. There's a lot of like cool little like environmental stories that go on in the town, like as you build it up, and you know, you give people Pokemon and then they evolve and like they develop relationships with them over time.
The Beauregard story thing, like I love that on that, like from the get-go, where he's like, it's going to be a wonderful Beautifly, and immediately I was like, it's
like,
not.
It's not gonna be.
Maybe not.
And so that was just so fun, being like, in the know, you know. And then you kind of figured out with him along the way, even if you don't know the context of that sort of thing. But yeah, exactly. The way that stuff is done is good, and like the character interactions feel like they were just generally pretty well thought out. It's the way that people would normally talk. The other
characters feel like characters rather than like little paper cutouts of like, I'm a youngster, here's my Rattata. It's like,
and more often than not, the dialogue options, which there's not a ton of them. I mean, just like not very frequently are there that many, but it's a step up for sure from, I remember Sword and Shield. My specific criticism in that game was that they'll ask you a question, and regardless of your answer, even if they're two completely different things, they will have the same line of text that connects those two things. So it doesn't matter what you say.
Well, this game like, kind of does that.
It kind of does, but it has like there's two extra lines of text afterwards.
There's still like those moments where the game's like, all right, here's these two options.
Yeah.
You have the first option, which is essentially yes, and the second option, which is essentially no. You are not, we gave you the no to give you the illusion of choice, because we're going to give you dialogue that is going to loop you back to having to say yes until you say yes.
But at least, I think at least it acknowledges the two answers differently, which is the thing that I was hoping for, looking for, is that like the yes is like, oh, cool, then we'll do that thing. And the no is like, I really think you should do it anyway. You probably should do it. Yeah. You know, like, and that's like that characteristically that just feels better. Like I thought my favorite example of all of this though is, and this is something I'd forgotten about until I was watching a completionist video on Golden Sun. There's really early in the game, you know, do like the intro, and then the main guy kind of like gives you the task of the quest of like, can you do it? Like, can you be the one to go save the world kind of thing? And if you say yes, cool, game starts, do it. And if you say no, then it gives, you walk out the door, and then it like does a Star Wars of like, this happened and everyone died. game over. And then like I love that so much that like it's just like, all right, cool, you said no, and then you just reload your save and start from there again, and it's totally fine. But yeah, that kind of thing is nice. So a criticism though for sure is I'm so glad that with the amount of resources that they had, that they spent it on the things that they did. However, it would have been great to have just a little bit extra resources or extra time to do some of the other things a little bit better. For example, the no voice acting still is like, there's not that much dialogue in this game. Like there's a lot of little bits.
There's
like, I'd be fine.
Lot.
No, but there's a lot
of dialogue in this video game. There is a lot.
So I mean,
way too much.
I mean, yes, there's way too much like exposition and stuff like that. And there's a lot of like dialogue with side quests, which I don't care if those don't have any voice acting, that's fine. But the main, in the same way that Breath of the Wild did, the main storyline stuff, like just the main quests. And I haven't gotten to the end of the game, so I don't actually know how long all that stuff is. But based on what I've seen so far, I can kind of estimate. Okay, well then I guess I don't know.
It's probably more than you think.
It sounds like that is the case. Nevertheless, to take that extra time.
But I don't say that to say it's too much for voice acting.
Right. Yeah. Because like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a game that exists, and like that's half of that game.
My main thing is like a lot of people have been saying that, where it's like the way to fix the dialogue is voice. I'm like, it would still be an obtuse game that is way too wordy and written honestly poorly. It would just be voice acted by somebody that's not me.
Yeah, I think actually what it might do is make them write the dialogue itself a little bit differently. Maybe, I don't know if that would be the case. Maybe. I think here's the
I don't have that much faith in them to do that.
I mean, I don't necessarily
voice
either.
Acted video game.
I would still prefer good voice acting of bad lines, or even decent voice acting of bad lines, rather than it does take me out of the like kind of realistic sort of feel of the game to just like see mouth flaps and have nothing about it.
The thing that I think is really bad about it too is like when we talked about this on my podcast Nintendo Noise, Steve was making the argument that he felt like he wanted them to at least get kind of like what they do with like Persona 5 or something like that, where it's like the main scenes are voiced and then everything else you have those kind of like little reaction grunts like in Breath of the Wild. I don't personally like that, but what I think the thing that makes it so bad is it's the flapping mouths and then there's just silence.
Yes.
Sword and Shield has that too.
Like it's like, what the heck?
So bad. And especially when it's like a reactive moment where someone's like, whatever.
Yeah.
But there's no noise with it. It's just like,
and there's even some voice acting in this game. Your character has
randomly voice. Your character like and he'd sound just like Link for what it's worth.
He does.
He really does.
So exactly those things. And what was that? Okay, so yeah, the example of why I was like, it feels just so weird is last night Ashley was playing the game, and I think I was playing the game separately on my Switch, and she was doing it on the TV, or I was doing something else at the time. But I like kept starting to say things, and she was like, "Hang on, I'm trying to read this." And I was like, it's so weird that there's stuff going on the screen, and like in my mind, with not looking at the screen, the game is just paused, or she's just looking at her phone waiting for something to happen, but it's like things are progressing. So that's the only thing, is like, it's not a big thing at all in terms of like making the game better by any means. It's just the window dressing kind of thing, the bells and whistles that I think will be a great improvement if they can do it later down the line. Like, again, like I said, I way prefer that they spent the extra time on any of the game mechanic stuff rather than that.
Yeah.
But eventually that would be like, that would make a nice just feel of a difference.
Yeah.
That's something we were talking about last week, right? Where it's like they nailed the gameplay loop so well that the only thing that you can criticize is the presentation, which is not very good, right? Like Pokemon look good. The animations are good. Aside from that, like the lighting's whack, the textures are bad, like all those kinds of things, right? We don't need to sit here and itemize the problems with how it looks and sounds and all those things. But like, those are things that at this point, like it gets tougher and tougher to make excuses for them, and like, I'm continuing to give them rope in the fact that like, like this, the last game was their first HD game, right? This is another major step forward, and they focused on gameplay and a lot of other things that are more important than how it looks or whatever. But it is upsetting because like you look at like the first 15, 20 minutes of Detective Pikachu, right? And what a rich, vibrant world the world of Pokemon is. And to have it feel like kind of flat or empty in some places. And like, I want it to feel like a world that is like, you know, alive and dripping with life in the way that Breath of the Wild feels, right? Or the way that like, you know, I think a good open world game feels, right? You know, it's not to say that they won't get there, right? Like, I think we have a really solid foundation to build off of now. And my hope is that they'll focus on those things more in the future. But I also think that there's like, they clearly need to hire new talent. Like they need to hire people that have experience making more rich 3D environments. They need to hire people that have better chops writing a script that actually feels like good dialogue and well-realized characters. And like, those are things that, you know, are not limitations of the world of Pokemon. They're limitations of Game Freak as a studio, or the amount of time and resources that
I think that's definitely the thing.
Like the biggest thing to me, especially with something like dialogue, it's not even just as simple as like, we don't want to invest in this or we can't do this. It's, we don't think this fits. Like it feels like to me, they're like kind of like with Zelda, which is a good example. How long did it take for us to get voice acting? And it's not because they didn't have the money or anything like that. It's because Miyamoto's like, nah, people don't talk in this world. So like Link doesn't have a voice.
And like I would be fine with that though if the game, like you said, like, oh, people don't talk in this world. It's like, yeah, but people never shut up in this world. So if you're gonna make me sit through hours and hours of storyline, like it should be well written. And
I completely agree with you. Just like I agreed with the idea that Zelda should have voice acting, but it's like, like in trying to diagnose this, everybody always immediately goes to, they didn't invest enough money. It's like, no, it's also like an ideological thing. It's like, it's also like them being like, no, that's not the world that we want to build.
This isn't a priority.
Yeah, I mean, I think priority, I think especially goes into what I was going to say of like, also kind of return on investment. It's sort of, but on time investment, I think maybe is more of what it is, where they, I feel like with this game was the first time that they really, you know, I tweeted this, but like it asked everybody like, all right, give us your actual ideas. Like, what do you think? How do we go about this? And people start throwing out ideas and like stuff worked and people were excited about things. And that's like, that kind of thing feels like it would have been fun in the boardroom, whatever. It feels like just on terms, they were like, okay, cool. All that stuff, we'll see what we can get done and we'll make a game, but we still have to get it out by blah, blah, blah. Like this is the deadline. They pre-decided that like, we're talking about maybe one day expanding our house. And then with that, we'll have to figure out like, what's our budget for the house? And then with that, can we get the like basic stuff to expand it? And then could we pay some extra more? And then what fun things could we do within that budget? And I feel like Nintendo, same kind of thing, time-wise, was like, we're going to get it out by this date. Everything we can figure out by then will be great. And then things like voice acting and probably dialogue, honestly, just come later down the process. And they're like, well, we didn't have time for those, but we didn't really care that much about those anyway, for the reasons also AJ mentioned of like, either they just don't care about them. Because I don't know that it's as much an ideological thing as it was with Zelda. Because again, Detective Pikachu kind of feels like it shows that they're more okay with it somewhat, but it definitely feels like regardless, priority is just not there.
Think about it too, though, right? Like what is, for years, what was one of the most popular avenues for Pokemon media? It was the anime, and which still is very popular to this day. And like,
but there's a lot of stuff with the anime that the games don't incorporate.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My point more being that like there is precedent for Pokemon to be a world that is oriented around stories, right? And they clearly want to tell stories, or they wouldn't be shoving all of this story down our throat. And for what it's worth, you know, we've been critical of it, and you know, warranted. I think this is the best the story has ever been. I don't think Pokemon's ever presented a story that I was more interested in.
I mean, I haven't played as many of the games,
I'm mixed on the story because I think this story is interesting. I think the story is poorly written.
I agree with that. And that's the thing is, that's not to say that it's good, but it is better.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it is a story that has intrigue and that there are questions that we want answered and all those kinds of, I've never felt that way before. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, for what it's worth, the only other game that I feel like has ever really tried to deal in heavier themes is Gen 5. And like, if we're being honest, Gen 5 is a bad story that, I mean, this is my opinion. Gen 5 is a bad story that Pokemon fans laud because it was an attempt at writing a story. But the entire thing of that game is like, oh, like, is Pokemon battling immoral? And then they're like, nah, it's not. It's cool. And that's the story. That's a bad story, right? Like,
I think that is the problem with most video game stories. But
that's the thing. It's prevalent, right?
Yeah.
But you know, but I think like Pokemon it doesn't need to be a great story to be a story that feels like it's better.
Right. That's like the biggest thing. It's like Pokemon fans see the littlest nibble of a story and they're like, where's the Oscar at?
Bonafide classic.
The best story I have ever read.
Like,
literally read.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things you guys talked
my
about
favorite book,
too,
Pokemon Sun and Moon.
as I was playing this week, you guys had mentioned kind of the dichotomy of like, do we give Pokemon more credit or less credit, or like, do we give it the benefit of the doubt or not give it the benefit of the doubt, kind of a thing. And it was interesting as I was playing it this week to like think about that as I was doing it. And I think I came down on like, I kind of go in a little bit pessimistically at this point to Pokemon. So I think going into this game, especially, I was like hesitant to be excited about it because I didn't want to let I just didn't want to be disappointed. So I think I like another game that just did the same functional things, I would have been excited about earlier than I let myself be with this game. So like generally benefit of the doubt, like I don't think there's I do give it excuses for some of these things like voice acting or whatever, that in other games, it's like, why isn't that there? Like, it just wouldn't make sense. Whereas like, I know the industry of Pokemon well enough to just like get it, you know, and be fine with that.
That's the biggest thing for me.
So it's, you know, it's a give and take, but it is interesting for sure to just think
I've
about
been
that as you're
looking like, and obviously like I've never stopped playing Pokemon since it became a thing. But since I got on YouTube, because I care about Pokemon so much, a lot of what I talk about is Pokemon. And because a lot of what I talk about is Pokemon, I track Pokemon pretty closely. So to see like the progression in real time of like, oh, they're trying things here. Like they are evolving consistently, and they have been evolving consistently since Sun and Moon. And they haven't really done that whole like shuffle that they usually do, where it's like, all right, here's a new idea. And then the remake comes out and it's like, we're going to take away all of those new ideas. Next generation. And they're like, here's one of those new ideas that we had before. We're going to bring that back. And here's a few other new ideas. And then the remake comes out. We're taking all that back. They didn't do any of that this time. All the new ideas that mattered, they kept. And they tried to improve them each time. And this game is just another example of that.
So I think they have multiple studios working on it now, I think is really going to help too. Because the fact that like they have, and not even like talking about outsourcing the remakes, which I think is also a good thing. The whole, them having that B team that worked on the DLC and could iterate on those ideas. It's like, that is only going to help, right? Because you'll have more chances for experimentation and
honestly, that was their
concepts.
Biggest problem before. Was that they always, well, since Pokemon became as big as it did, they operated in this A team, B team sort of situation as far as like how the games were developed. Because like the team that worked on the main line, like this is the new generation video game, wasn't like sharing notes with the remake team, you know? And it works this time around because that kind of happened with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, because it's not this like resource heavy thing, because it's literally a different studio that doesn't operate under Game Freak. It's just somebody that they commissioned, and then they said, hey, here's a producer from Game Freak to make sure that you guys are in line or whatever, and let them do their thing. Hopefully now with the A B team situation, what it seems like is what it is, and they communicate more. And they're like, hey, here's what we're doing in our game. Your game's later, so try to incorporate as much of this as possible and do as many new things as you can do with that in mind as well. And it, I mean, like I said, it seems like that's what they're doing. Arceus is consistent with that, at least.
I mean, speaking of the DLC bits and all that, here's something I was thinking about this week in general. And then also Benjamin Aquino asked relatively whatever, man, I'm doing great with words. You're
like
doing
Pokemon.
bad with words.
That's like Pokemon.
Benjamin asked, as Pokemon Legends Arceus is doing so well, it's inevitable that DLC is coming. What do you want out of the DLC? And do you think they should mimic Sword and Shield DLC? So this, and then also after this, I want to talk about this holiday. We don't know what would be coming out for Pokemon, if anything at all. And so just like, what's our top 3 to 5 picks of like the kind of thing that could come out, other than obviously DLC is one of the options that could also come out earlier in the year, and something else could come out in a holiday. But yeah, just want to get to that. But first we'll talk about the DLC stuff.
So the DLC, I think, can go into, or DLC, whatever they do this year. What they do this year, I think, can go in 2 distinct directions. Either they do nothing, and that is ideal. Honestly, I want them to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think we need a break.
Because really, this game, it's kind of obvious that they meant for this game to come out last year. Like, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl is probably their summer game, and Arceus was their holiday game. But COVID said no. If that is the case, and they were like working on whatever's after this, or maybe it was DLC, it coming out this year means that they have less time to like flesh it out and like make it what it really could have been if they took the time to do it. So hopefully we get nothing this year and we get something like early next year. But if they do something this year, I hope it is like a new Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Sword and Shield sort of situation, where it's just more Pokemon, because more Pokemon in this game just exponentially increases the amount of content because of how the game loop is. So like if they take the Pokedex from being like 240 whatever Pokemon to 340 whatever Pokemon even, I think that would breathe a lot of life into this game. And if they can
adding like 2 extra areas with like an addition of Pokemon would be, I think, really all you need to do.
Right. And then maybe, I don't have an idea off the top of my head of what it'd be, but a new mechanic that goes in with that, like alphas is a thing, or maybe not even quite that drastic, but like just as something else that even changes up the stuff that's already there just a little bit. Or like,
I would love if they because something that we talked about last week a lot on the podcast, Pete, was how there's like a lot of stuff that's like, this is almost there. Like I can throw all my Pokemon out, but they just stand there for no, like even stuff like that where it's like, all right, I can throw my Pokemon out and now they follow me, like even just that. Or they're like double battles are now a thing. Now you can use 2 Pokemon in a horde battle. Man, stuff like that I think would be really cool for DLC.
I think my number one thing would be like, if I had my say, I would love to see them add the ability to have like player versus player battles. And I think framing that in the universe, the way that I would do it would be, hey, you as the Survey Corps, you've been so successful. You have proliferated this idea of capturing and battling Pokemon. Everybody is like, they're getting into it now. And, if you get to the late game, I'm sure you've already found this. AJ.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
There's a character who you can go, and there's like, you can summon characters to battle you. Right. And they're the best trainers in the game. They have more than one Pokemon. They actually have decent move sets. They're higher level. So to me, I would love to see them just take that and expand it and be like, hey, like there's actually folks from all over now who are battlers who are coming to Jubilife because we've created this culture of capturing and battling Pokemon, and everybody wants to come here and get Pokeballs.
Honestly, I think with how this game was made, and we're talking about a lot of time, like obviously, there's a lot of compromises made. I think that was always meant to happen, whether it be DLC or not. I think that they wanted to have a multiplayer component. That's why throughout the whole game, another thing that I was tracking was the amount of players that this video game is, because they waffled back and forth on like, it's 1 player, It's 2-player now. It's 1-player again. It's 2-player now, you know? So something tells me that they had that planned where like at the end of the game, in post game, you could play with your friends or whatever. And because the way that the story justifies it is it's like, people are terrified of Pokemon. You think they want to have a full team and battle you with them?
Right.
Like,
which is cool. Like that's fine. But like, I feel like as like an end
now
game,
at the end of the game, they're less scared, and they're like, "Oh, he likes Pokemon. Look how he turned out. What if I like Pokemon too?" So I think that would make sense as part of the DLC as well.
And then like you could tie that to the multiplayer thing. But if you're not interested in doing PvP and getting into that, then it would just be like essentially like a battle tower kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think it would be. I'm not sure exactly what this is yet. I haven't fleshed it out in my brain, but something where you're building something as well. I mean, like, I assume, to what I understand, you kind of build Jubilife City a little bit.
Yes.
Like there's construction things that happen. So I'm like, is that going to be a thing? I don't know yet. I haven't gotten there. But something else where you develop something in some way by the gameplay loop that you do, where like a school or something where there's some mechanics through that. I don't know what it is, but something along those lines. Basically, yeah. I mean, like you guys were talking about too, in the single player part, re-incentivize more things that you would have already done to do more, because it's just fun to do more things that are fun, like inherently. But yeah, then the multiplayer stuff definitely makes sense. As far as the second kind of topic that I mentioned of like something to come out this year, 100% agree. Not any kind of mainline, like an additional regular Pokemon game.
Absolutely.
However, it's something like Pokemon Stadium, like in the same way as new Pokemon Snap, like a new Pokemon Stadium, that if this is the single player thing, you know, Legends Arceus, then Pokemon Stadium is like mini games and multiplayer, and that kind of, you know, it facilitates a whole different side of Pokemon, and they can even experiment more with the battle systems in there, because that's just battle systems. So you could have multiple different modes that are different battle systems or something like that, you know?
I think that's the coolest thing, because like there's a lot of stuff that if they fully went on they sort of do it a little bit, or have been doing it a little bit, where it's like they take things from games like new Pokemon Snap and they incorporate them in the future. I think where they're at now, and this was another thing we talked about and me and you, Parker, have talked about it a lot of different times, where it seems like, or what people are beginning to want, because this is how they're presenting it right now, is like all these little like micro sub series of like, oh, and Arceus is the single player one, and you know, and this is, you know, it feels more like, to me, with how like Sword and Shield specifically turned out, that they have all these microcosms for experimentation that they intend to incorporate somewhere else. It would be cool if they did a stadium, and that was with the intent to be like, okay, let's figure this out and have it in a way that we can incorporate in Generation 9.
I mean, in the same way that like Little Town Heroes, Pete, you've said a ton of times, is like, it seems like they were definitely using some of that to flesh out some of the ideas just for Legends Arceus.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's like, so that's my number one vote would be for a new Pokemon Stadium kind of thing. This holiday season. Otherwise, though, like, you know, could also be fun to see like Detective Pikachu 2. Like, they announced that was going to be a thing, right?
Like last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they axed it. I think.
Really?
They're not doing a sequel to the movie.
Detective Pikachu, the 3DS game. We're supposed to get that, and we never got that.
Nope. Wow. Yeah, I think they're quietly hoping that we will forget about it.
Also, Pokemon, they don't know how to sleep. Confirmed. Pokemon kids.
Yeah, my hope is that if they are feeling like they need to get something out, that they are comfortable with little things like that, because as much as I'm dying for DLC, I want them to have more time with it. You know, I feel like DLC for this game next year, like early next year, would feel better than in the fall, but
I would rather them leave this game alone.
That's fair.
Do the whatever the whole new thing is. But DLC would be cool if it's already planned.
Yeah, if it's already planned, or if it's things like, you know, if one of the purposes of this game is to build out their Pokedex of resources and like you know, actual animations and all that kind of stuff, then just chucking that into this game when it's things that they're like Creatures Inc. or whatever is working on in the background of like just getting those to exist in the first place, then they would have to build up more things around that besides just like, oh, randomly some more Pokemon are appearing and that's the only thing that's happening. But if that's like the main focus, then I can't imagine that's not something that they're already have underway, for future projects, for whatever, or even have like half of the work done or more than half from Sword and Shield and can kind of dump it in here and just add additional animations or whatever from various Pokemon.
Val, we're talking about the 3DS game was supposed to be ported to Switch. Not that the 3DS game never came out. It didn't come to Switch like it was supposed to.
Yes. Or maybe it didn't come out and we're from alternate universes. No, space-time distortions.
Oh no, those are canon.
I come from a universe where Detective Pikachu does exist.
That's crazy.
All in all, I'm having such a good time.
Game sucks. Terrible.
And
game,
it's
dude.
It's so
dead
bad.
game.
It's bad,
but it's good. Yeah,
we really need Digimon really bad.
No, it's game of the year, baby. What's that?
That's my favorite game this year so far.
I mean, we're gonna come back to Arceus in some of the Q&A, I think, but we don't have to talk about the Kirby one because there's not really anything to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's get to the Q&A. Let's answer some Pokemon questions.
But real quick, Yacht Club Games announced Mina the Hollower, and I think I saw that, Pete, you're very, very excited about that. So
I'm so excited about this game.
It looks pretty good. Not gonna
I'll
lie.
keep it short. I love Shovel Knight. I'm a diehard Shovel Knight fan. I've beaten it many times.
I've never played.
You really should.
Oh,
If you like 2D platformers, I think it's the best of the modern era for my money. I big fan, and it's really exciting to see like Yacht Club be in the post Shovel Knight part of their timeline, because they never intended to work on that game for as long as they did, and it's like it's been like I'm pretty sure the studio was technically founded in 2011, so they've been working on this game for like 10 years. They're ready to move on and do something else. And as much as I want a Shovel Knight 2, I get that they need space from that. It'll come eventually. This is super exciting to me because they decided, hey, okay, you know what, Pete, we're sorry, no Shovel Knight 2 for right now. We're going to just check another box for you and make a Link's Awakening spiritual successor type game, which is just absolutely my jam. And the Game Boy inspired style and everything. The Game Boy remains one of my favorite consoles, specifically because of its aesthetic and its music and that style. And them doing the Shovel Knight thing of like, well, what if this kind of game never stopped getting made and it continued to advance in terms of animation and all those kinds of things, but still keeping the color palette and all those kind of just brilliant. Absolutely. I cannot wait. I've already backed it on Kickstarter. Let's go.
Yeah. Something that Grimhane asked me, or just asked in general, when I tweeted out the announcement for this, is like, why are they doing a Kickstarter? Why are they doing a Kickstarter? Do they need
are you asking that question?
Yes. Why?
Because I mean, so here's the thing, right? I'm inherently against that attitude that like, if you're successful, you shouldn't use Kickstarter, because ultimately what you're doing, like the purpose of a Kickstarter, right, is to be like, hey, you want us to do this thing, right? It costs money to make the thing,
right? And
getting this up front allows us to remain independent, work at a rate that doesn't require crunch. That doesn't mean that we have to be worrying about having enough money to complete the project. And you know, like, to me, like, that's what you want, right? Like, if you want a good game and you trust the studio, like, you should trust Yacht Club, because they are one of the few studios that have done Kickstarters that actually delivered. And not only delivered, they gave us more than what was promised in every single one of the releases. So to me, it's like, yeah, like, if you're a fan, put your money where your mouth is. If you don't feel like you want to do that, well, guess what? You don't have to. Right. You absolutely have the opportunity to buy it later.
My thing with why would they do, because I don't feel that way. I'm backing it. But why Kickstarter? Why don't they have their thing? You know what I mean? Like, why don't they facilitate their own equivalent of Kickstarter? Because why are you paying Kickstarter?
I think it's just because Kickstarter is like it's established and there's like the discoverability engine of Kickstarter and things like that where it's just it works and people get it and you don't have to sell them on something new. It's just like, hey, you Kickstarted our last game. Remember how well that worked out? Well, here's another one.
And I can imagine too, like
it just makes sense.
Yeah, and the trustworthiness or something like that of it, even though
I think people trust Kickstarter.
Well, I think they trust
them on Kickstarter for sure.
They do. They trust that, and they trust Kickstarter as a
platform
thing that exists, that functionally it works. But whether or not they trust other people on Kickstarter, obviously that's, it depends on the thing. But I could definitely see somebody who doesn't know anything about it. I've seen people be like, I don't know if I should put my credit card information in this thing or whatever, so like that just negates any of that right off the bat. And the discoverability part, I think, is also that. So it legitimizes maybe a little bit, even though they don't need that really. No. But it's like a, safeguard or maybe something on that front.
Yeah, but I think it's just like it's an ease thing, right? Like, and having that money up front creates a safety net where they can work on it at a less, at a less stressful pace, and that's only going to be good for the finished product. Not to mention, they clearly have a lot of it done already, right? Like they're not just getting started on it; it's already something that's like viable. They could have shopped this around. They probably could have just released this themselves,
Bob streamed a demo of it. It's probably still streaming it currently.
So there you go, right? Like I think it just makes sense for them, and it allows them to continue to do their thing, and
and probably the Kickstarter, like with Shovel Knight being as successful as it was, I could imagine that Kickstarter themselves was like would want Yacht Club Games to use them for that reason. So could even give them like a good discount or something. Yeah, exactly. It's like it legitimizes Kickstarter for a good game to come out of it.
Right.
So that's beneficial, for them for sure.
Makes it a healthier ecosystem to kickstart more games.
Yeah. But I think, like you said, Pete, like this is also a way that people can, if you want to support this game $3,000 worth, you have a place to support this game $3,000 worth in a legitimate way, and you get a lot of things from it and all that kind of stuff. I personally I'm just going to get it when it comes out because it's going to come out.
So, like literally the reason I did it is like, I'm treating it like a pre-order where it's like, hey, I love Yacht Club Games. I believe in what they do. I'm going to buy this game when it comes out either way. Yeah. If me giving them my $20 now rather than December 2023, knock on wood, that's what, hopefully. yeah, that's fine. Like I would, take it, if it means that they can maintain the culture that they have there where they're self-funded and they get to be the masters of their own destiny. Like that's important to me, and I want that for them, so I'm happy to give them my buck. And if you're not, guess what, it's already funded, so you're good.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, cool. Looks great. It looks like the nice thing of like with Shovel Knight, from what I understand because I haven't played it, that it's the aesthetic and all that of Game Boy, in this case NES, and in the other case, but without all the limitations, where like it looks like it's a very like action heavy game from the looks of it, like super fast moving in some of the sections where they're going between different abilities or whatever, that kind of stuff. And that's just super cool because like on a Game Boy that would have probably been bad. So but now you can kind of like get the benefit of both of those things at the same time, which is cool. Looks good. All right, Q&A time, y'all. We got a couple questions. German San Juan asks us, with Arceus being dropped, I remembered that Pokemon Sengoku tactical game. He later remembered Pokemon Conquest, LOL. With the success of Arceus and Snap, do you think we'll see more ambitious Pokemon titles being made?
I'm confused by the Pokemon Conquest mention.
Drawing the line between those things is confusing for me.
I guess maybe like if they do another Pokemon Conquest, that it would be more ambitious, or like that any projects that come out of Pokemon would therefore be more ambitious. Maybe
I don't think that they're related.
Yeah, I think that there will be more ambitious Pokemon games akin to Pokemon Legends Arceus, and not in the sense of like we're going to get more Legends games, but they're Pokemon games. They're Pokemon games with more invested in them in terms of like the gameplay loop and the visual
games that are like willing to take risks on some level.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I do think that is true. Yes,
I think right now where they're at, it's a bigger risk for them not to. because there's so many. I have not seen a single person being like, can't wait for Gen 9 to be just Pokemon all over again. Everybody's like, I can't go back from this. Like it needs to at least be this or better.
I think they realized maybe finally that like if they just kept doing the same thing, they're at risk of the bubble bursting eventually. And the Pokemon bubble has not ever quite burst. It got smaller, it got bigger again, but it's never popped. And if it pops, that might be it, right? And I think they're realizing like it's time to innovate and do something new and find ways to take it forward, and figure out what it means for the next.
Do that while they're like kind of on top in a lot of different ways. Like TCG is killing it more than it's ever killed it, like that sort of thing. Go is still making a lot of money. So like they're killing it. So it makes sense for them. And also they have Breath of the Wild as this like success story of like Zelda wasn't failing. Zelda was being Zelda. And then Zelda became more of a thing. It was like sort of Zelda was like a more successful version of Metroid where everybody that's a gamer is like, yo, Zelda's like super successful, dude. Like it's Mario level. And it's like, no, there's like one game that's 10 million units. And even that one game has like asterisks of like, if you can buy all the copies and blah, like all the different variations and stuff. But Breath of the Wild is just like, nope, 20 million units, one console.
Well, like they also have to look at Animal Crossing and be like,
yeah, that too.
Do we need to make 4 games a generation, or do we need to make one game that's so good that people really don't stop playing it?
Right.
It's a better business model.
But even that, I will push back because there's like a lot of people that's like they didn't do the scummy thing of making the two like the two versions of blah blah. I don't think that they ever intended for people to buy both versions. Like it's definitely like a consideration. It's like, oh, maybe people will buy both versions, but they're not. We're going to force people to buy our game twice. Version.
No, right. If you're doing that, it's because you have a Pokemon problem, right? Again, you're not normal. This is the thing. You need to recognize that you're not normal if you're doing that.
You refuse to interact with other humans. Because if you even interact
with
one other human, and you don't even have, it doesn't have to be a person now. Like I completed my Pokedex, not because I bought both copies of the game, but because I tweeted out, yo, I need to complete my Pokedex. And people were like, all right, bet. Send me Pokemon. Like you just literally just need to talk to people. So I think that whole thing of like, I mean, you two versions of the game is like, like, no, they're just trying to force interaction more than anything. They want you to talk to another person, not buy another video game.
That's true.
But yeah, Animal Crossing, good inspiration as well.
Yeah, I could, to the original question, I could definitely see just that in general, more Pokemon games would continue to be more ambitious just because also things kind of, that things just one up themselves more often than not. That's kind of part of it. People have seen Pokemon Snap at this point. People have seen, so you can't really go back particularly well unless you do something like Pokemon Quest or something like a free little mobile game, but that's like a whole separate ball game.
Right.
But no, it would be, I mean, even to the original thing of Pokemon Conquest, like it would be fun to see, more different things like that, just using the Pokemon IP in different directions, because at this point, people are just interested in Pokemon. And so even if it's a worse selling Pokemon thing for them, they just had their best year in like forever across Pokemon things as a whole. So, they can afford to just do a smaller budget Pokemon thing or a medium budget Pokemon thing, I guess, and that'd be cool. I'd be down. More niche, perhaps. Next question. Poofy Rain asks, from what I asked last week, seems like it may come true about it being the best selling Pokemon. Hats off to Nintendo. We'll come back to that and we'll talk about that in a second. Also, hats off to Nintendo for hitting over 103 million. My question today is, will Nintendo hit another milestone this year, and what would help them achieve it? I guess the question is, what counts as milestone? Like, is it moving up in the ranks? And if so, I think, what do they have to beat? Is it PS4 that's next up?
Yeah, it's PS4, and they're like 15 million units behind, I think.
I think they'll hit that this year.
I guess it also count, like, what do you count as this year? Just like 2022 period by December 31st.
Yeah, or do you mean like this fiscal year?
I'm talking about this fiscal year, but even that, yeah, I think that by the end of the holiday season, they will pass PS4.
It's a holiday
I think the only thing that makes me think that they might not is the PS4 is still selling.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
but it's selling very slow.
it's true, but it's a moving target. I don't know. It's hard to
It's
say,
what,
but I
like
think
they're like
probably
9 million behind it right now, or something like that. The Switch is going to sell more than 9 million.
They're 13 million behind
13
it.
million.
Oh, it's at 116 million right now.
It's 117 million, and the Switch is at
Okay.
103 and a half.
Right.
So
As of what? When was the cutoff?
December 31st.
December 31st. Yeah, I think that they're going past that.
I think you're probably right. How many did they sell this year? Do we know?
So
I mean, their
far,
target for
the whole fiscal year was like 23
million.
They lowered it to 23.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, with that in mind,
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
It seems like a safe bet.
Yeah.
I would guess definitely so. I mean, honestly, at that point, they might as well overtake the what actual date are we talking
next
about? The next
impressive milestone would be PS2, and I don't think that they're going to do that for at least another 3 years.
It would have to be another 2 or 3
Yeah.
years
Well, so
unless a price cut happens and sales spike.
Right above PlayStation 4 is Game Boy and Game Boy Color at 118 million. So at whatever point they pass PlayStation 4, they'll also be passing Game Boy most likely. So
within a couple months anyway.
Right. Yeah. I'd say by December 31st of 2022. I would imagine for sure that they would.
I'd say by this time next year, definitely.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I'd say by in like 2027. I'm just kidding. Just gonna keep moving it up. But then the first part of it was best-selling Pokemon game.
I mean, Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, 31 million.
Yeah.
I have a hard time thinking it hits that number.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Because
I think the thing about the Pokemon game, like, this is selling very well, obviously, yes. But like, I think the cutoff for this game selling like that is conservatively when the next thing comes out, and it might even be before that.
Yeah.
Like, I think our answer to this last time was that it depends on reception. And this game is being received very well, but it depends on how long it will continue to be. You know what I mean? Like, where it's like the thing that everybody wants to play. Because what got Animal Crossing to be at 30 million is that people really didn't stop talking about it until they brought out the DLC, and then people started talking about it again,
And that could happen with this, right? The DLC could come next year and that could reignite interest. It will probably continue to sell over the year. Sales will come and go, things like that. So there's like a lot of opportunity for it to continue to grow momentum, but I think it really depends on what happened. Like if there is definitely another Pokemon game coming on the Switch, right? Then that limits how well it will sell by a lot.
Especially if it takes a lot of elements from this game and improves on them, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Then it's like, oh yeah, Pokemon Legends Arceus was great, but like play the new one because that one's
the same thing,
better.
but better. That's the game every time, right? That's the problem.
Right.
Yeah. I could imagine it getting up to like the low 20 millions at this point. Like,
yeah,
that's doable.
But I think I agree with you. It just doesn't have there's a high chance that it eats its own tail, like the Pokemon.
I don't think 32 million is impossible, but I think 32 million would be hard. Very hard.
Yeah, right. Like if it happens, I wouldn't be like, how the hell did that happen? Yeah, exactly. But like,
because
I wouldn't count on it.
That we know. So like the question is, I wonder too, like, what is the Pokemon fan base, old, new, and young? Like if everybody that's like, I want a Pokemon game, it agrees on one Pokemon game, what is that number? And is that number, close to?
I think that's a hard number to place because
for sure.
Because you can't even do it like you can a lot of other series where like for the most part, like if you played the last Call of Duty, you're going to play a new one and like the same retroactively. Yeah. Pokemon as another
it's a moving target.
It comes up a lot here. most people that play every new Pokemon game, it's their first Pokemon game. So like, then you got to think about, okay, how many people have lapsed and will they play the new thing, you know? Because like it will be like, you can't really look at it and be like, okay, so the best selling Pokemon game is Red and Blue, and that's 31 million or whatever, right? So that means that 31 million people, that's the Pokemon fan base. But like, how many millions of people have been born since then, you know, like, that are also playing Pokemon? So I don't know. Like, maybe the closest that we can get to a number like that is Pokemon Go. And at that point, we're looking at hundreds of millions.
That's true. Yeah. Jumpo asks, what do you think is the worst aspect of Legends Arceus?
The artistic presentation. Everything that's not the gameplay loop, right, is like,
I think the story.
I think it's honestly, it's like, take your pick, right? Like, it's the story, it's the environments, it's like, those things could all be a lot better. I think
I'm less mad about the environments and graphics and those kinds of things, because I do think generally like art direction, like I'm happy with it, and I think like it's kind of goes back to the thing before where, I mean, I'm making excuses for myself, which is that like, it's fast travel is nice because like things aren't like super crisp and beautiful and things, but there's also some gameplay benefits from that where like because it's not like tons of foliage, then you can see things more clearly that are, you know, it's, if there's a tumblestone over there, like you can tell that it's there because it's not got like 50 trees blocking it or those. So it's some of those kinds of things where like I have built-in excuses that explain away.
For me, I just genuinely don't care.
But also that.
But also I think that like this game, like to say that this game is like night and day from Breath of the Wild is like insane to me, because like the difference between them, and there's videos that prove this, is a shader. Like, just put, like, if this had better shaders, people would be acting like this is a technical achievement. So it's like, does it look as good as it could? No.
Right.
But it doesn't look that bad where I would say it's the biggest detriment to the video.
Oof, but I think
it's some of those textures are bad. And I'm not saying that like a shader wouldn't fix them, but hey, there ain't a shader. And then like the lighting is bad. A lot of the Pokemon look like they're made of plastic. Like,
but that's what I'm saying. Like, even if that was the case, that doesn't change the game. Like,
no.
So like, for me, the reason why like I can't say that it's the biggest detriment, like it's definitely a detriment to the video game, is that there's gameplay things that are not fleshed out in this video game that I think objectively matter more than like, oh, this texture could have been better. Like, if I'm in a situation where a glitch happens and that is the difference between me catching a Pokemon and me not catching a Pokemon, that's going to be higher on my list than like, oh man, the lighting on this Pokemon looks weird.
I think for me, I've had less technical problems than, I wish this looked a little better.
I've had like control issues, stuff like just straight up decisions that they made with how the systems work, like approaching a Pokemon and being like, did I catch that Pokemon? And me having to be in a very specific area for me to target it so that I can pull up the Pokedex. That to me is a way bigger issue. Like,
that's
that
fair.
Single thing. And there's a lot of stuff in this game mechanically that is like I said, like they almost got there,
like a little janky
not
or
there.
Something.
There's so much stuff like that.
It's clearly the first game of its type they've made, right? And it's like, okay, well, next time. You'll get them next time, kids.
Yeah. I think for me, it's within those kinds of things. I think story type things and the feel of that and the disconnect of how like in the world you generally feel, graphics aside, maybe for the rest of the game, and then the story stuff. Some of it, I'm like, yeah, I believe this, but like potato mochi for the 12th time. Not necessarily, like, that kind of takes me out of it.
I've been saying it whenever I stream this game that comes up. I'm tired of potato mochi in real life now. I've never had it in my life. I've never seen it, but I don't want it because I've had it so many times in this video game that I'm tired of it. It's over for that.
Exactly.
But yeah, that also, like, I will say that that's just a personal thing for me. Obviously, like the graphical thing, like literally, there's 2 times that I notice what a game looks like when they promote the game, and the first time I play the game, and then after that, it's all like it all fades to black. I don't care about what the game looks like. Smash Brothers, Smash 4. I remember there was like 3 times that I recognized, oh man, this game looks really good when they announced it, when I played it the first time, and then randomly 2 years after the fact, I'm like, damn, Toon Link looks really good in this video game. But other than that, it's not like a constant thing that I'm always thinking about of like how bad or good a game looks.
I think for me, it's funny because I'm not like a crazy graphics person. Like I appreciate good graphics, but good art design is way more important in my opinion. And I think that's why it stands out to me so much is like, I'm not that guy, but I'm like, oof.
But
like,
you noticed it.
Yeah, like this grass looks like butt, or like the fact that I'm like,
does look like butt.
I'm at the coast, right? And I can see the grass and the sand, and they're the same texture, and it's just like 2 colors next to each other, or there's like a fog over the whole map all the time. Like, and then it gets actually foggy, and I'm like, oh no, I can't see anything. Like, that's the stuff that takes me out of it more than anything. And it doesn't make it a worse game, but it makes it a less
immersive.
It makes it less immersive. It makes it feel less like a real world, and it reminds you that you're playing a video game. And that's not inherently bad, but you know, I think the magic of a good open world is you being like, whoa, like,
right.
Like, wow, they thought about this thing, right? Like we talked about last week, like the thing with the Breath of the Wild, where like if you ask the question of like, can I do this? And the answer is that they thought through it enough 99.9% of the time. The answer is yes, or at least it's somewhat yes,
right?
Is something that would be great.
One of the first videos that I took, or the like video screen captures I took of this game, was first area. If you're in the tent and then you kind of, there's some rocks to the side of you, you can go around them, and then you can kind of get a shortcut back up. But also if you just walk into certain areas, there could be a lip like that big and you just can't step up it because video games, you know?
Right.
And I just took a 30-second capture of me just going blip, 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 turn, blip, 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 trying to get up this thing. I was going to tweet it out and be like, yes, this is the Breath of the Wild of Pokemon.
There's a lot of invisible walls in this game.
Yes. So much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of invisible walls in this video.
I encountered the dumbest one earlier. I was on the volcano part, and there's like, you know, there's like that little thing and you can't fly over it, and I was like, why?
Because that's like where the boss battle is or whatever, like that situation. Like I was doing, like I experienced that today, where I mean I've run into a lot of invisible walls prior to today, but it was the first time that it got in the way of the gameplay, where I'm trying to get a freaking shiny Growlithe, and you can like the path to where Growlithe spawns near the, well, I'm not going to say because I don't think Parker got to.
I've not even
spoiler.
That
would be a spoiler. I'm not going to say. But
I just got a wall fragment. That's where I'm at.
Nice. But I'm trying to get to the shiny Growlithe, and the video game is like, I was like, oh, I can get there closer if I go from this place that is like where a boss battle is. But I can't because that's where the boss battle is. So the game segments that part off as like, there's like a wall here, but visually there's not really a wall here. So I have to fly around the invisible wall where the boss battle takes place to go to where I need to go, where it made it so that in reality, the route that looks shorter on the map is not actually shorter because I have to go around the invisible wall. Like, but
yeah, that stuff. Moving on to Discord questions. This one's the last one for Legend Arceus. True Fernie asks, is there a specific part of the world you want the Pokemon games to take inspiration from for upcoming games?
Africa.
Yeah, I think to me it's just different biomes, like things we haven't done before. I think like Africa would be a great one. There's a lot of like, you know,
there's like every biome. That's the main reason why.
Yeah, there's a lot of biodiversity there. There's a lot of like wildlife that only exists there. That's an easy one. I think Australia makes sense for the same reason.
Yep.
I think a desert environment, something that's like that has like a little bit more of like hey, like almost everything is green all the time. Like what if it wasn't? What if it was a game that was almost all Arctic or almost all this or whatever? Like I think that would be like, you know, basically like Sun and Moon, but in this kind of environment would be awesome, because like going from island to island would be cool. Like I think just something that feels more different than what we've gotten.
but also they'd have to do it in a way that is like Sun and Moon, because they did it with Hoenn, right? Where it was like, oh, this is a tropical place, and the whole too much water thing, which is true. There's too much water, Pokemon, and all. Like that's the thing that I would want them to avoid with that. Like that's why whenever I think of like a new place for Pokemon, it's like what real world places have a lot of biodiversity, so that I don't get to the point where it's like this Pokemon game has the most fire types ever, but least amount of X type ever.
Right.
You know, like that sort of thing.
For
it's
sure.
like,
Yep. I mean, I feel like Africa could be interesting too, because there's within, you know, like maybe there's this kind of desert in one spot or something, but like because of different and like harsher environments, especially the kinds of plant life and all that can grow in those areas,
right,
I think are maybe more different from other ones, you know, than just like grass. It's regular grass. You love grass.
Yeah, like you could have a desert, you could have a savanna, you know, you could have like a spot that's like an oasis and it's super lush and more like jungly. Like, yeah, like that would be awesome. That would offer a ton of options, you know,
because we don't have, on the jungly front, there's obviously Gen 3 has a jungly area. And I can't think off the top of my head of really any other ones besides in new Pokemon Snap. There's the jungle area with like the Liepirds and stuff. That would be super cool.
Yeah, that could be another one too. South America would be a good solution.
Amazon, selfishly, to Africa, maybe more hairstyles. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, everything we want from video games is kind of selfishly anyway, so yeah, that's as good a reason as any. Perfect.
Yeah,
counts. All right, and last but not least, speaking of places in the world and all that, Mega Man asked, if money wasn't a problem, where in the world would you want to go on a holiday right now? And of course, COVID isn't a thing.
For me, it'd be Japan. I've always wanted to take a extended trip to Japan and get a chance to kind of like drink in the culture a little bit, because there's like Japanese cities are really different than Western cities, but like rural Japan is also like some of the most beautiful natural landscapes in the world. So like going there during like cherry blossom season, like, yes, please. That'd be amazing. Love to see that.
Japan would be cool. I'd be down for Japan because Universal. I also want to go there.
Right. And it's like they have like a huge culture of like retro video game stores in Tokyo, and like, you know, there's a lot there for a geek.
Pokemon centers too.
Pokemon
centers. I'm still mad about Nintendo NY. Put it back. Who cares about the rest of Nintendo?
Right?
Honestly, put it back. Like,
Nintendo World Store. How dare you?
How dare they?
What about you, AJ? Where would you want to go?
Japan. But mostly because I just want to go to the Universal Studios Park. The other stuff is cool too, but I'm not like that much into Japanese culture as a whole.
Yeah.
But video game stuff is cool.
Yeah. It's hard. I have a hard time saying, because like earlier on in my life, like pre-college and stuff, I traveled around more just because I was in Europe, and it's just easier to get to different places from Europe because you're already kind of central to more stuff. So that, and also I was like with my family. So if my family was traveling somewhere, I was going somewhere, but now like I would have to make the decision to do it. And that doesn't happen as often. So that, but that said, like cultural reasons, I feel like, honestly, Japan would be super fun for that. Just like landscape and nice stuff. It's the cheesy answer, but like Mega Man, I'm coming to hang out with you in the sheep or
in Narnia.
In Mega Man. I mean, in Mega Man in New Zealand.
You could just go in your closet to get there, man.
I so could, yeah. But I've got family in Australia, so like one of these days, maybe I'll go back, and I've been there twice. I was 5 and then I was 10. And I've not been back since. So
I'd like to go there, but I'm really afraid of spiders, and they got some freaky spiders over there. So I'm good.
Big spider. They got the
I can't, dude. Like if I saw
huge, dude.
If I saw one of those giant
spiders?
things in real life, I burn the house down. I'm out.
Yo, but it's the closest thing we have to real world Pokemon, dude. It's Pokemon, man. Just throw a Pokeball at it.
I don't know, man. That's the line for like. I like Ariados and everything, but in real life, I don't know about that.
The Pokeball you're throwing at it though is 5 feet across and it's solid cement. So, you know,
I'm back. I'm
That
back
probably
in.
still won't kill it. It probably still won't kill it.
Yeah,
This thing is
just
huge.
picks it right back up. Just
Yeah,
chucks
throws it back.
No, that's the proportional strength of 10 spiders.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey guys, we did it. We did a whole podcast. Here's the
We did
question
it.
for the comments. Anybody who's still listening, tell us this. What's the worst spider? I guess I don't know. We'll go with that.
All of them are the
Yeah.
worst one.
You're not wrong.
What do we mean by that?
That's
It's
up
like
to
the
them to
huntsman
decide.
spider is big, but like I'm
Yeah.
not scared of it for any other reason than that.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to kill me.
That's what
Yeah.
everybody gets. Make your case, tell us why. But while you're doing that, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the podcast channel if you haven't already. Also, we never remember to say this stuff at the top of the show,
True.
but like Flipscreen Games, Nintendo Noise, go check out Pete.
No, I
Flipscreen
did
dot
say
games,
that.
that's the
I literally
website.
said
Oh,
that.
you did?
Yes.
He
When
said
I
it.
introduced him, I said, check in the description.
I
Or-
said we don't say it. I wasn't part of saying it, so
you don't say anything in the
I'm just
beginning of the
kidding.
show except for hi.
No, that was me.
With the thing that
backpedaling.
we don't say at the beginning of the show is rate the podcast.
Yes.
Rate it. Thanks.
It helps a lot.
Goodbye.
Do it.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. See you next time.
We